An introduction. After photographing over 1,000 weddings in my career as a wedding photographer, I've learned a few things. I've learned things that have helped me book 70 wedding seasons consistently. I've learned things that have helped me travel to every continent, including Antarctica. I've also managed to do this while being incredibly shy and introverted. Throughout this audiobook, I will share with you what I've done to go from a struggling server at an Outback Steakhouse in Canada to someone that's created a full-time business in wedding photography. I'll also share my secrets for creating a full-time business that does not take over your life. For me, I value time freedom the most. Of course, you have to be at weddings on Saturdays, but you can customize the rest of your week. Want to spend a few days at the cottage? No problem. You don't have to ask anyone for the time off. Saw a cheap last-minute vacation to a Caribbean island? Go for it and answer your emails from the pool. We also customize our seasons heavily. For example, from April to October, I will book local weddings, then block off from November until March for travel and destination work. Running your own business makes your life incredibly customizable and fun. The financial side is also very good. If you're averaging $3,000 to $4,000 per wedding and photographing 60 weddings per year, your business makes $210,000 annually. Not bad for a job that also comes with time, freedom, and flexibility. All this said, not everything has been perfect along the way. My hope with this audiobook is that I can save you some of those struggles that I went through. Whether you're year zero into business or you're already photographing busy seasons, there is something in this audiobook for you. Thanks for spending this time with me, and if you enjoy the book, please leave a review for me. I would really appreciate it. Chapter 1. My first wedding. The first wedding I ever photographed was a disaster. I booked it from Craigslist for free. Picture this. I'm sitting alone in my blue 1995 Ford Taurus in one of the sketchiest neighborhoods in all of Toronto. There is no sign that a wedding is happening at this address. All the curtains of the house are closed. No one has gone in or out of the property in the 20 minutes that I've been sitting there. My life savings and camera gear are on the seat next to me. No insurance. I don't know how to run a business. At this point, I had been trying to become a wedding photographer for over a year with no actual bookings. I was young, awkward, and incredibly introverted. I knew how to talk to the skateboarders, snowboarders, and bands that I'd been photographing up until this point, but unfortunately, I am not cut out for wedding communication. To add to that, I hated wearing dress pants and dress shoes, and you might be asking, why did you even go down this path? In all honesty, it was money and a stable career. There was a moment when I actually typed into Google, what are the best paying jobs in photography? Of course, wedding photography was always up high on that list. After years in the action sports and concert photography space, I was sick of getting paid in free t-shirts. I was in college for computer programming and graduating soon, and part-time I was a server at an Outback Steakhouse. I took a few 9 to 5 p.m. co-op jobs during my computer programming years and quickly realized that I hated that life structure. If I finished all my work by 1 p.m., why did I have to stay until 5 p.m.? Serving at Outback Steakhouse was fun, and in many ways, it prepared me to run my own business. In Canada, like in America, servers are paid pennies hourly, and the restaurant relies on the customers to pay their wages through tips. Dumb concept aside, it creates an exciting game for an 18-year-old. Sometimes you go to work, get great customers, make good money, maybe $300, $400 a night if you're closing. Sometimes you go in and you roll cutlery for 3 hours, you make your 9 cents an hour and get sent home because no one is coming in the door. This randomness is being an entrepreneur. You have to learn to handle that mentally. When you have those good nights, know that there will be bad ones, so don't go out and blow all of your cash because you have it. In a wedding photography business, this cycle lasts 12 or 16-month periods, so it's even harder to come to terms with it mentally. Maybe you book 20 weddings in February and take 20 $2,500 deposits, and then not a single inquiry comes in for March and April. $0 made. But all the money was still being spent on marketing in your business, so those months you didn't make money, you spent money. Then in May and June, you start photographing those weddings you booked and taking those final payments. Suddenly, you're too busy to spend any of the money you're making, and you feel comfortable financially. Then December comes, and you make $0 for the entire month going into the holidays. You can see how this messes with your mind if you're playing the day-to-day finance game and not looking at it by years and spending accordingly. It's not that scary though. If done correctly, you look at a $100,000 to $300,000 a year business with very few expenses. Throughout this book, I will be giving you the advice that you need to get to that spot and how to stay there. Now back to my first disaster wedding. I sat in my 1995 Ford Taurus looking at flashcards of wedding poses and reviewing my shot list. P.S. If you go to taylorjacksoncourses.com/book, there is a link to my shot list as a gift for you spending this time with me. I exited my vehicle and walked towards the house and knocked on the door, and the door opened into the darkest house that I've ever seen in my entire life. At this point, I thought I was about to be robbed. Free Craigslist photographer brought to house to shoot wedding, all gear stolen. Yeah, that makes sense. The person opening the door told me that they're all down in the basement. Super, even sketchier. I went down the stairs into the even darker basement. I hadn't even told anyone the address I was going to be at today. Safety had never even crossed my mind. I was just excited to be taking wedding pictures. Leading up to this day, I had spent hours and hours learning everything that I could about wedding photography. Nothing could prepare me for this, though. Rounding the corner at the bottom of the stairs, I see a wedding dress. I relax a little bit. The couple is seated on the couch, being photographed by another photographer. Okay, this is strange. Then there's another photographer. There are also 3 assistants in this basement. Did they just hire every free or cheap photographer at Craigslist to this basement to battle it out? At this point, all of my learning and training falls apart. I have no idea what's going on anymore. This moment is the clearest memory of the entire day. What appeared to be the lead photographer was shooting on a super wide lens in this basement, a Tokina 11 to 16 millimeter f2.8. This was not a wedding lens that I had learned of. Great for skateboarding and for bands, but a very weird wedding choice. Then it got weirder. One of the assistants held a huge quantum flash kit with an external battery pointing directly at a tiny handheld reflector and bouncing back at the couple. It sounded like an old-time portrait studio with the thunk from the light and then a high-pitched recharge frequency every time the flash fired. The photographer yelled at the assistant to go up in power and then direct the light slightly to a different place. The confidence was overwhelming. These guys knew what they were doing, and everything that I had learned was wrong. I was 20 years younger than them and also very introverted, so I did not say anything after this point in getting ready. The couple said hi and explained that they had also hired this team for the day. At this point, a lot of the pressure was honestly off. I took the job to build portfolio, and now I'm not responsible for anything. Looking back on the day, I am reasonably sure that the photographers were the ones that closed all the blinds and made the house as dark as possible. I will later find out that they were shooting JPEG only and at f8 or f11, and every single image was at least 5 stops underexposed. I didn't learn that for the next 2 weeks. Back in the day, I didn't know what to expect heading into the wedding ceremony. I knew that it was a gazebo wedding in a park, and there were 10 guests plus the couple. A gazebo is a small circular pavilion-style structure, usually made of wood, painted white, in the center of a park or maybe a backyard. We arrived at the park, and the gazebo was super dumb. It was the dumbest gazebo I've ever seen in my life. Very small, barely enough room for the officiant and the couple. Only one entrance, and it was up to a platform 5 feet up, so there was no way to get close to the couple's eye line during the ceremony. I also had to battle for position at the end of the aisle, 3 photographers and 3 assistants. They were all running full flash outside. I felt so uncomfortable at the end of that aisle. There were 5 crew and 10 guests. I got a few photos of the couple coming down the aisle, and then once they were in the dumb gazebo, I just sat back and tried to get anything with my super zoom, my 18 to 200 millimeter lens. There was another problem though. The other 2 photographers and lighting assistants were climbing up the sides of the gazebo to get the photos. A gazebo that comfortably fit 2.5 people now had an additional 4 human beings hanging off the railings around them. They were all a 2-foot radius from the couple, and the entire ceremony they covered on 11 to 16 millimeter lenses. They moved for the rings and first kiss. They all stacked at the top of the tiny stairs, blocking me from getting anything. I took a few photos to show the couple if they asked why I didn't get anything from the ceremony, but I figured these guys had it. I figured they were pros from the level of confidence that they had. The guests talked after the ceremony about how crazy the photography team was, and I did everything that I could to separate myself from them. The couple knew that I was doing this to build my portfolio, so they asked if I wanted to do a few photos without them and the other team. By this point in the day, the couple also wanted as much space from that team as possible. We walked around for 15 minutes, and I got a few photos that remained in my portfolio for years. I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do on a wedding day, which is important learning. I sent them about 75 photos from the day fully retouched, and they loved them. Then a week later, the worst happened. Or not the worst, but almost the worst. They'd received the images back from the other team, and they were beyond disappointed. Unedited JPEGs at high ISOs from one of the first digital SLRs ever made. The couple sent me a few images of what they received and asked if there was any way I could help them in Photoshop. They were terrible images. With all honesty, they might be the worst wedding images ever taken in the history of time. I said I'd do what I could and tried to save a few of the underexposed family photos for free, and I did an okay job. Copying people from other photos that they were better exposed in, painting in highlights and details, and converting them to black and white because the color was absolute trash. They were really happy with them and asked if I was able to fix 75 more. I quoted them $30 per hour, and then I never heard from them again. So the takeaways here: don't shoot a wedding on a Takina 11 to 16 millimeter lens, super wide, as your primary lens. It's important to learn what you don't want to do just as much as it is important to learn and understand what you do want to do. Confidence does not dictate quality of work. Have a clear contract. Even if it's a free job, say that you'll be the main photographer. Accept that you're going to be a button pusher for the first few weddings and no one will see your value until after. In the beginning, the value in building your portfolio is worth not making full payment on each wedding. And it's tough to go from free to $30 per hour. Chapter 2, Why Wedding Photography? You're already into a book on wedding photography, so I probably don't have to do too much convincing. To put it simply, wedding photography has changed my life. You're creating something of incredible value for your couples and their families for generations, plus you get paid really well to do it. Yes, you have to work Saturdays, but Sunday to Friday is pretty customizable. There will be work, but you can put that work around family or travel that you want to be doing. Speaking of travel was a big reason why I wanted to start my own business. I had this dream of working in coffee shops in California or Tokyo, a goal of getting paid to travel and see the world. I had these thoughts before I even found wedding photography. When I discovered wedding photography, I did some quick math. If I make $4,000 per wedding and can photograph 40 weddings annually, I'm making $160,000 a year. Sure, some expenses will come out of that, but for the most part, this business is pretty profit heavy. Out of scope of this book, I put my profits into early stage tech company investments through Garage Capital, a company that I'm an LP at. It's essential to build a retirement plan when you work for yourself. Coming back to weddings, well, you physically have to be somewhere. If you book that wedding in Paris, you get to photograph that wedding in Paris. When you build a brand, opportunities outside of weddings will also begin to present themselves. For example, we regularly do travel work with brands and other companies. While weddings are and will always be the staple of my business, the longer you do them, the more you can explore other options while knowing that you'll at least be able to pay your mortgage. Creatively, weddings are also really rewarding. You can put in as much or little effort into your creativity on the wedding day as you'd like. I would say that I'm pretty reserved from a creative standpoint, but someone like my friend Sam Hurd thrives on it. If he's not doing something new and unique within a dull space, he's not having fun. That works well for him and his brand, but it's not for me. I am happy photographing the same venues every single weekend, which to you might sound great or like a complete nightmare. I like the efficiency side of weddings. Being able to do a great photo session with a couple, the family, and the wedding party with a focus on taking as little time away from the day as possible. For my couples, the photo shoot is not the reason for the wedding. When you get to work with your ideal couples every weekend, you feel like just another member of the bridal party there with a camera. It's honestly gratifying. The other huge plus is that you can tailor your entire business around what you enjoy doing. For example, I like to primarily do candid photography at weddings. So I just put that in my marketing and it naturally attracts the people that also want that. Enjoy doing prints and albums? Make them part of your packages. Hate doing them? Don't do them. Only want to work May, June, September, October, and take July and August off? You can do that too if you want. You get to customize this business to be precisely what makes you happy. In the beginning, you're going to have to take some jobs that you shouldn't because they're paychecks, but with time, you get to limit those and only work with the people that you want to. For me, weddings unlock time and financial freedom and come with many unique and exciting opportunities. You're also creating something of great value with the skills that you've learned over the years. I am so happy that I went down the path of wedding photography, and I can't imagine what my life would look like without this career choice. Chapter 3, Social Status. Social status is a weird topic to put up front in this audiobook. However, I think it's one of the most important business and life topics to understand or at least be aware of. Some level of understanding here will give you an easy base to create a sustainable business and keep yourself sane. Like it or not, most transactions in life are based on social status. We all have underlying desires that are not reasonable. Why do we want that Porsche or that handbag? When hiring a wedding photographer, they're looking for someone that will give them more social status, that friends will validate as a decision. Conversely, couples don't want to hire someone that takes away social status. Their status goes down if they're having a black tie wedding and their photographer shows up in Crocs and jeans. One thing I don't hear about enough in wedding photography education is how important it is to display you're someone that will mesh with their day, both in personality and in professionalism. The good feeling that couples have about you is that they don't sense any potential embarrassment by hiring you. Now, there are sub-games within this. Some couples gain status by hiring a button pusher, someone that they can boss around in front of their friends and family. Some couples gain status by hiring an equal. They respect you and your work as an artist. They want to show you off to their friends. Look at this amazing photographer we found. It's obvious which couple is more enjoyable for both business and life. Now, let's talk about the bad news. In the beginning, you will have to have some of those button pusher jobs. More than half of my first season was this style of assignment, and it almost made me quit. Those are not your ideal couples. Learning to attract your perfect couple as fast as possible is important to getting out of that button pusher stage. I put this chapter near the start because everything I talk about in this book will be related to it. For example, your social status is not just one thing you do, it is everything you do, both in your business and online as a person. Social status is emotional. It is not quantifiable. And it comes into play when selling on emotion rather than something that is a monetary value or a collection of things. I'll explain more about this soon because that is one of the keys. Historically, humans are tribal creatures. There is safety in the tribe, and there is more safety in being necessary and important to the tribe. Now, social status isn't straightforward all the time. An example, my friends with the most money drive $5,000 pickup trucks from 2014. They could easily afford a McLaren or whatever they want, but for them, there is more social status in not being the person that drives that McLaren. They would rather instead belong to the tribe of humans that live a responsible life, even though they have the means to be extravagant. The same goes for a mom dropping off her kids at school. If she shows up in a Ferrari and everyone else is in minivans, she will not be part of their tribe. People compete for status within their tribe, and tribes compete for status against rival tribes. What does that mean for us as wedding photographers? A few interesting things. First, the wedding ratchet is real, especially here in North America. Everyone is trying to have slightly more excellent weddings than their last friend to get married. Not by a crazy amount, just a little bit. There is a balance. For you, this means if you get into a group of friends that are getting married and keep getting referred within that group, each wedding will have a little bit more budget. They'll want just a little bit more. Social status also has weird implications early on in your career. For example, if you have 14 followers on Instagram, you may notice that your couple doesn't tag you when they post your images. If a friend were to click through on that tag and see those 14 followers, that would take away from the couple's social status. This effect also plays the opposite way. If you're popular, they will want to brag about you. As a result, they will tag you more and promote you more organically. The easiest way to get hired for a wedding is to be part of their tribe or a similar tribe. When you show up on social media, if that aligns precisely with what the couple also values, you'll get hired very quickly. Sure, you have to be good enough. However, being a good enough photographer is no longer enough. For example, in my city, at least 100 photographers are good enough to be shooting high-end luxury weddings, yet only 3 or 4 ever get considered. You might like this advice or hate it, but reaching those high-end weddings in your area requires a little bit of a life overhaul to match status with potential couples. The good news is that you're already on your way to it. You know that the best weddings to photograph are for people that are like your friends that you just haven't met yet. Sure, well, some weddings will always be paychecks, some will always be nightmares. Over time, you will start shooting higher and higher percentages of your ideal couples. Attracting those ideal couples is not as easy as adding a line of copy on your website or showing a photo of you wearing designer shoes. It's everything that goes into your brand and everything that you display to couples in real life and through social media. All of this said, you don't have to become someone that you're not in order to photograph nice weddings. People will see through it if you're creating a persona and acting it. Unless you're Drake. Side note here, my friend Auntie Donahue wrote an excellent magazine piece years ago that talked about how Drake created this character Drake and then started playing Drake every day over the years. He eventually became Drake, and now his character is authentic. Drake is not the only example that's happening. Back to the book here. People buy from people that they like, and people buy from other people in their tribe. Many people will tell you that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. If they're not similar to your ideal clients, maybe it's time to start hanging out with more people that are. Now, I'm not saying ditch all your friends and only hang out with people that'll think you get ahead, But there is a pretty easy and natural progression to this. Again, you might hate to hear this or you might enjoy it. Being a wedding photographer will take over your life. That's not a negative thing, it's an opportunity. Most of my best friendships are a mix between personal and business. I think spending time in those friendships is a lot more rewarding, to be honest. Most of my best friends are wedding vendors. My wife, Lindsay, is a full-time wedding photographer. Then friends that aren't in the wedding photography business run tech companies or do other entrepreneurial activities. Now, when you're an entrepreneur, you're kind of on an island. So it's very nice to be able to surround yourself with other islands that you can visit that understand what you're going through because they're going through it as well. Surrounding yourself with other wedding vendors of similar caliber is an enjoyable way to live. You can refer each other and make each other additional money. Plus, you get to hang out on wedding days. One of the things I actually miss about working an office job is the sense of community. You see the same people over and over again, and you spend your time with the ones that you enjoy the best, or I guess the ones that you're forced to. Going into a wedding day at a venue where you know all the staff, the planner, the cake designer, the florist, it's a really great feeling. Linking back to social status, being well connected in the industry also looks good to anyone else looking in. It shows that you're part of a tribe similar to your couple's tribe. Your tribe just does weddings. If social status aligns, they don't only hire you, they hire your entire team of friends, and you get to work together every single weekend. Now, to go a little bit deeper into status, people get their status from different places, and it's tough to market yourself to all of them. We'll use a bride and a groom wedding as an example here, and to overgeneralize and stereotype, maybe the groom's into weightlifting and he gets his status from that, or he's big into basketball or football. Being knowledgeable about those topics is what he's proud of. Then maybe the bride is more into art and travel. She gets her status from visiting new places and knowing about small cafes in the 9th in Paris. So how do you appeal to everyone? The answer is that you don't. We're all playing different status games and it's impossible to compete on all of them. What's worked for me is thinking about my ideal couple and more specifically the key decision maker in that couple. For example, in a bride and groom wedding, 95% of the time in my experience, it's the bride making decisions. So it's more important to appeal to them without alienating the other partner. It's also critical to be in tune with the other partner because they're probably feeling uncomfortable being in this new world of wedding planning when they sit down for that first meeting. We're all quick to assume that that other partner doesn't like us, but when it comes down to it, we're just not in their normal preferred space. Knowing this is also something to keep in mind on a wedding day. Sometimes you arrive for getting ready coverage and it starts a bit awkward. The faster you can identify what status game the group is playing, the faster they will become comfortable with you. If you're like me and you are incredibly socially awkward, one thing I recommend you ask for is Instagram handles on your contract. That way you're obviously able to tag them in photos when they go up, but you're also able to creep them and get to know a little bit about them before the wedding day. Even some of the most minor talking points and questions can break the awkwardness quickly and get the group acting normal and accepting you as part of the tribe for the day. As part of the tribe, you will create significantly better work that is more true to the day, and you'll have access to more authentic moments. Chapter 4, The First Weddings. Booking my first wedding was not easy. I knew I had the skills I needed. I knew I wanted to be a wedding photographer. I just felt utterly invisible. I spent weeks trying to modify my website to be perfect so that if a couple came across my website, they were for sure going to book. I optimized my website for SEO, search engine optimization. We'll talk about that more in a future chapter of the book. And I tried every strategy that I could think of. I spent a whole year booking no weddings. In this book, I want to focus on the things that I should have done rather than what I did. Also, just like the first disaster wedding chapter, it is important to figure out what you don't want to do as well. So if something in this book just doesn't seem right to you, don't do it. Instead, pull the bits and pieces that align with your business mind and implement them. Then you'll be designing a business that makes your life and mind happy. Now, back to the first wedding. At this point for me, I had about 10 images in my portfolio of couples I'd photographed and a friend's wedding that I had attended as a guest. Not enough, especially now. Looking back, I would set up as many shoots as possible with friends. I would pay my friends to photograph them. I know that sounds crazy. They should be paying you, right? The value is all on your side in the early stages of your business. If you can build a business 1 year faster, that means that you can make an extra $100,000 over your career, just waiting for you to get there. A lot of people will tell you to do styled shoots as well. These are great, but they are some work to set up. You also have to have some level of industry connections to get them rolling. Instead, I would recommend thinking of a few friends that have gotten married recently and get them back in their wedding clothes for a shoot. One of the early successes with my business was a couple that I knew through the music industry. They had a wedding pretty young and didn't have the money for a great photographer. Their wedding photos were okay, but they wanted to do something more themselves. So I asked if we could do a shoot around our downtown area. She had a short dress and they both wore Converse. At the time, that's exactly what I wanted in my portfolio. Without a shoot like this to show people and connect with those ideal couples, I was doubtful that I would book one organically. By doing the shoot over the next few years, it turned into 5 or 6 other similar looking weddings. People have an idea of what their wedding looks like, and by doing something similar, you just fit in a lot easier. In addition, people are also willing to overlook that you're new and maybe haven't shot that much. I realized early on that people feel like they have discovered you. They find you as this underpriced, undervalued photographer that is amazing. When they discover you, they become your biggest advocates. So back to what I would do now. Don't stress about setting up styled shoots unless you already have industry friends and they're easy. Instead, set up easy walk-around shoots in locations that local people would recognize. If possible, get on the grounds of a wedding venue to build your portfolio there. Next, I would attend portfolio building workshops. Let other people do the hard work, like setting up couples, sourcing dresses, and getting location permits. There are many of these around, and the nice thing is that some of them also involve a little bit of travel. By getting early travel content in your portfolio, you'll be faster to generate trust with couples. But there is a bit of a trap to this. Setting up your own shoots with friends and working with workshop couples and potential model couples does excellent things for your portfolio, but what it doesn't do is develop your skill set correctly. Working with awkward strangers becomes a whole new thing. For better or for worse, like attracts like, so if you're awkward and introverted like I am, you'll probably end up working with many awkward and introverted couples. When you're photographing friends, it doesn't take that long to get them comfortable. When you're photographing strangers, it's really hard. It took me years of shoots to get comfortable, more importantly, confident when posing strangers. If you're a member over at taylorjacksoncourses.com, you actually have access to my wedding photography posing for introverts course. It's a full breakdown of my system for getting couples to become as comfortable as they can as fast as possible. So the faster you can start photographing strangers, the faster you can build that skill set. Now, the question, how do I start getting real couples in front of my camera? Well, what I did and still recommend is gifting engagement sessions to couples inquiring about your wedding services. Again, the value is all on your side. You're building your portfolio and your stranger's skill set. So why not give them a try before they buy option? I offered most of my first couples to inquire with me a complimentary engagement session. I would limit it to 10 images for them. And I would also mention that I get to use them on my blog and on my website. Then something surprising happened. Every couple that accepted the free engagement session ended up booking their wedding with me, usually booking it before we even did the engagement session. Their small yes to take me up on that offer was a big step towards trusting a newer photographer on the scene. It also showed that I had some confidence in my skills and my craft. I ran this model for anyone who contacted me within my business's first year. Outside of this, other weddings started to come in from friend referrals. They saw that I was creating this wedding work and recommended me to their friends that didn't have a typical photography budget. I took 2 weddings in my first year for less than I should have. However, I was happy to work and money wasn't the goal in year 1. Many educators will tell you that if you sell a $600 wedding, you're stuck there. Any referrals from that $600 wedding will never pay $2,000 or $3,000 for a wedding. I personally did not find this to be true. When working for less than I knew I was worth, I would come up with reasons for doing it for the client. Then I would let them know that they're getting a deal. I even told them during the first meeting not to let anyone know what I charged them for this. That sentence tells the couple that they're getting a super secret deal and they feel extraordinary. They become an advocate for you and your business for a few reasons. First, on some level, they probably feel like they owe you something for doing this deal. And 2, social status. For social status, if you're doing that wedding for $600 and your wedding has a starting rate of $2,200, that couple wants their friends to visit your site to see how much they spent. They want to prove their social status to their friends, which helps get traffic in your direction. The psychology of this entire business is honestly fascinating, and we will get to a lot more of it over the following chapters. Looking back, I should have gone out of my way to set up more shoots for the portfolio I wanted. Now I would also be generating some behind-the-scenes video content for marketing as well. More on that later. If I can recommend anything at this point in your career, it is to start building the dream portfolio that you want to be hired for. If you start with the pieces of that portfolio, the paid gigs will begin filling the gaps. And always remember, workshop images are great, but don't spend all your time there or you're going to miss out on the skills you need to make those images with real couples. Chapter 5, Selling on Emotion. My experience, another key to success in the wedding industry is learning to sell on emotion rather than a numbered list of what they get for each dollar. Going back to the social status chapter, if they believe you to be at least their equal, they will have more room in the budget for you. It's not as common as it seems to lose a booking on price. It's much more common to not even get the initial inquiry because you're pricing too low. They will think that there's something wrong with you. Well, I say to sell on emotion, the price tag is also part of that emotion, weirdly enough. As an example, say you have the same quality of work as a photographer across town. You've both been photographers for about the same amount of time, shoot on same equipment, have same deliverables in your packages. You start at $2,000, they start at $5,000. Who does the client think is a better photographer? The $5,000 a day photographer is a better photographer in the client's mind. Even though it's an unreasonable emotion since the work and the experience are the same, it is an emotion that the client truly feels after looking at the price tags though. A fundamental principle that has worked well for me is to not make your couples do math. It brings them out of an emotional headspace and into an analytical space. This principle took me years to figure out. I went to a talk early in my career and a photographer said that the package and credit system is the best way to price wedding photography, meaning that they sign up for package A, you get a $4,000 credit, and that credit goes towards a $2,100 album, or digital files are $800, or parent books are $920, next day preview images, $350, a second shooter is $1,400, and you can add a photo booth for $1,600. Let me know which of those you want for your $4,000 credit. This strategy did not do me well. Mostly it's the couple's first marriage and they didn't know what they wanted or needed. It's your job as the expert to help guide them. Make your packages and pricing as easy as they can possibly be. If you're interested, I have an entire in-depth pricing course for members over at taylorjacksoncourses.com, or my pricing is public over on my actual weddings website at taylorjacksonweddings.com. We'll talk more about private versus public pricing later in this book. People don't buy things, they buy feelings. So let's get Tony Robbins for a second. People don't buy products or services, they buy identities. So what do people actually want? The 6 human needs. They need certainty as number 1. Couples don't want to get burned on this deal. They don't want to feel pain or be embarrassed by the decision. Number 2, variety. They don't want to do the exact same thing that their friends did. They want a little variety. Number 3, significance. That you're going to make them feel more significant, special, and unique. Number 4, connection and love. That you genuinely like them and are excited about working together. Number 5, growth, that their life is going to become better because of this decision to hire you. And number 6, contribution, that they're helping you become a better artist in some way. If you satisfy all of these needs, you will book work. There is one that stands out above all others though. Number 3, significance. People will spend a lot more money to feel significant. That goes for what they spend on a photographer, what they spend on a wedding, and what they would spend on a car or a bag or a house. To go even deeper, if you want to create the most profitable sought after business that couples don't even interview competitors, just do more than they could ever imagine. Now, that doesn't mean spending 20 hours designing a birthday cake for each of your couples. What this means is to deliver value in a scalable way. How do you do that? You go over and above what anyone else would do. Pick some of the following list. Make video venue tours to allow couples to make a short list of venues and not waste their time actually visiting every single venue. You build a wedding planning guide targeted at your local area that includes all of your favorite vendors. Do yearly videos with those vendors to discuss local trends and how to have a more enjoyable wedding day. Start a wedding photography podcast where you interview other vendors. Create an annual physical magazine that you can put in all of the wedding shops around your town. Make it break even, split the printing costs with everyone in the magazine if you want. Hold in-person wedding planning seminars at local venues or rent a space on Peerspace. Write great blog post articles for each venue that you've enjoyed working at. Do behind-the-scenes wedding day videos with other vendors. Tell their story and ask for their wedding planning tips. Organize big wedding giveaways with other vendors. Organize other giveaways with products and services your ideal couples would be interesting outside of the wedding space. You can do hundreds of things, depending on what seems the most fun and exciting to you. There are no limits here. If you can create assets of massive value, they are going to position you as an expert, and as a result, your status will both climb with couples and vendors in the industry. When vendors see that you're bringing them work, you're going to be the first on their suggested photographer list every single time. Going back to the 6 human needs, significance is the biggest. If you can make other vendors feel more significant, you will create a lifelong friendship and also make money along the way. Coming back to selling on emotion, stay away from numbers when possible, make packages simple, guide them along the way, let them know what most couples do, and give them easy examples of what that looks like on your website and hopefully in your promotional video you'll be making soon. Be a human. Discuss why you enjoy doing what you do and phrase it from their perspective. They want to know that you're a safe bet, that you won't embarrass them, and that you're going to make them look amazing. Make it as easy for them to book you for their day as you possibly can. Chapter 6, Website. My first website was terrible. It was half emo bands at concerts and half weddings. It was a black background and there was music playing. I probably spent 40 hours making it, hand coding it line by line in Dreamweaver. Don't do this. Don't be me. You're probably being hit by Squarespace ads and Wix ads every day. They are unfortunately not the best for photographers anymore. I won't be super biased with this, but I'll be a little bit biased. I'm now part owner of a company called Focal. We're at www.bookfocal.com. If you visit my website at taylorjacksonweddings.com, Focal made it. There are a few different tiers of websites, ranging from an easy AI auto build that you set up in about 10 minutes. It'll write some copy for you for your About Me section that you can modify, plus it'll auto-generate packages for you to get started with. Beyond that, there are more advanced tiers that come with a human working with you to build your website. Focal is the company that I wanted to exist when I was first getting started, so that's why I am involved with them now. Then, not only do you get a website, but you also get an entire backend with Focal to manage your business. For example, you can take bookings and payments. There are sample contracts that you can use right now. There's even simple galleries that you can get started with. The idea is to roll a bunch of your monthly subscriptions as a photographer all into one, so you're not paying for Squarespace and a gallery host and a system to take bookings and sign contracts. Now everything is just all as one. So there's the easy answer. Give Focal Auto Builder a shot, www.bookfocal.com. The longer answer, if you do want to go it alone and you want to design everything yourself, is here as well. Looking at my stats, over 80% of people now view my website from a mobile device, so design accordingly. Most people arriving at your website probably also jump straight to pricing. They want to make sure you are within their budget before exploring further. From there, they usually bounce to the portfolio page, maybe a few blog entries, and then the About Me page. There is an entire chapter on this coming up, but video content is one of the keys to a website. The first piece of video content that you should be making is a promotional video, an easy 2-minute edit with some behind the scenes footage, sample photos, and a bit of your process on the wedding day. The idea of this video is to pretty much summarize everything from your entire website in 2 minutes. After that, you have one piece of video content done and you realize that it's effective and that it's not so bad to make. It's time to make more. Venue tours, vendor spotlights, whatever interests you. The more real and human you can be, the faster people are going to trust you and give you their money. For some reason, also being in front of the camera gives you an instant expert badge, even if you're still newer in the industry. A text piece of website content that has been really effective for me is talking about what I like about wedding days and what I don't like. I do this intentionally to push non-ideal clients away while becoming more attractive to my ideal couples. I hate doing 4-hour photo sessions on a wedding day. I am happy to tell my couples that. My workflow anchors itself on getting them the most beautiful images possible in the most efficient way. I want them to enjoy their wedding day and see their guests rather than spend an entire cocktail hour off with me at a second and a third photo location. Telling couples this on my website has improved my wedding day happiness significantly. While there are no actual rules, the pages you probably need on your website are an About Me page, a blog page, portfolio, and pricing/contact. The contact page can also double as a pricing page if you're just listing your starting rate. In the next chapter, we'll be talking about my experience with full public pricing versus having it locked down and only having a starting rate. Other keys, make it clear what location you're in. Your location should be included in the title tags and the headings. There is a ton to learn about SEO, search engine optimization, when building your website. And I could do an entire book twice the size of this on this single topic alone. If you are going with a focal website, that's all taken care of for you. However, if you're building your own, I suggest looking up some SEO videos on the website platform that you're using, since they're all going to be a little bit different. Some are super customizable, some are not. For images to display on your website, I have a few options. Number one, show what you want to sell. If you don't have it yet, get out and shoot it. Number two, use images that people can picture themselves in. I like photos of couples walking away in wider, more environmental shots. Three, couples only. So this one's subjective. I like to focus on just images of couples and some solo photos, maybe of a bride. Number four, keep editing cohesive. Try to stick to one preset or look. Number five, make sure the images look good on all screens, but prioritize mobile. That means vertical photos are usually better. Maybe that makes you feel sad. It makes me feel a little bit sad because I like shooting horizontal photos. For the About Me section, if you're a member at taylorjacksoncourses.com, you have access to sample About Me scripts in Book More Weddings this year. There are also a few sample promotional video scripts as well. You can copy these straight out or modify them if you want. If you're not a member, please don't steal other photographers' About Me scripts and then pass them off as your own. It's a small industry and it gets awkward when someone emails you to say, stop using my About Me script. And if you write a good one, sadly, people are going to steal it from you. And then you'll email them and they'll say that their web designer did it, but you'll know that they're their own web designer. Happens a lot. So take inspiration from other websites, but spend time making it your own. When it comes to blog posts, this is where a lot of your early search traffic is likely going to be coming from. Design blog posts in a way that couples searching for a photographer or a venue will easily come across. Well, you could name your blog post something like Steve and Jess's wedding. A better title is Mildred Estate Barn Wedding, Steve and Jess. Even though it doesn't seem as personal to the couple, it will book you future work. Write all the copy from the perspective of search as well. For example, mention the city and descriptive words that people might be searching for. Write naturally. Google doesn't like it if you keyword spam. If you are a focal customer, you'll also have access to our new auto blog feature that will do a lot of this work for you. Note, this feature will be out 1 month after this book is released. When it comes to images, also title them for things that people will be searching for. For example, make the file name Mildred Estate Barn Wedding.jpg with all hyphens in between for a wide shot of the entire wedding. You can add alt tags, and the more descriptive words you can put in there, the better. To go next level, you can copy everything you're doing with images here and also be posting them on Pinterest. You're already doing most of the work, and by cross-posting there, you have another chance of being seen by future couples. One other important thing is to let Google know that your site exists. Google Search Console is an excellent place to start with this. Coming over to the contact page, if you are just posting a starting rate, I think it's reasonable to include it on this page rather than making a full dedicated page just for that one sentence. The most important part of the contact page is ensuring that your contact form actually works. This might sound ridiculous, but try it on your computer and your phone browsers. Also try it every time you make a website update of any kind. I've specifically had mixed results with Squarespace contact forms over the years, so just make extra sure things are working as they should be. Once you think you've completed your website, give it to someone else and ask them to use it as though they were a couple and they were looking for a wedding photographer. Ask them for feedback, but more importantly, watch how they use the site because that is more important than their verbal feedback. Do this with a few friends or strangers on the street. Okay, maybe don't do strangers on the street. That's a bit weird. Next chapter. Chapter 7, Pricing, Public versus Private Packages. A year ago, I flipped my pricing from private, which had only a starting rate, to fully public on my website. For almost 20 years of my wedding photography business, I had only a starting rate. The switch was scary. I thought that no one was going to inquire with me ever again. I was wrong though. Things got better. I might not recommend this to you just yet, depending on where you're at in your business. Let's weigh the positives of each. So starting rate only, the pros, generates more inquiries, may potentially get couples to find budget once they fall in love with your work, and no one locally is going to steal your packages and undercut you by $500. For public pricing, the pros are that only qualified leads will be inquiring. People will know exactly what they want, and the first contact to deposit received is actually just a day or two. As you can tell, I might suggest a starting rate only if you are just getting started. More inquiries lead to more interactions. You get to learn more about what couples want and how to sell your services. Those first few meetings are very important for learnings. If you are a member at taylorjacksoncourses.com, you also have access to 3 real-life wedding meetings with couples, audio recordings, so you can go through meetings with me. I've noticed since switching to public pricing that it attracts couples that know exactly what they want. Another bonus I've found with this style of couple is that they don't send a lot of emails. Booking is easy and fast, and leading up to a wedding, they're generally great communicators. Overall, it's made me about the same amount of money and cut my email down 1/4 of what I was usually doing during a regular season. In terms of life happiness, it's also been a significant improvement. When to make the switch from private to public, well, that's hard. There will never feel like a correct time. My advice is after a few years in business, you will start to notice when your big booking seasons are. For here in the Northern Hemisphere, in Canada, late January and early February seems to be the most consistent booking season. So I'd recommend switching your pricing up around that time. That way you can run at least a little bit of a split test. Then if you switch to public pricing and the inquiries continue to come in, it will erase that fear that you had in your mind. After a year, I am very pleased that I have made the switch. For what to put in your packages, Focal will give you a good starting point if you use them. I'm a hybrid photo/video shooter, so I went with 4 packages, 2 photography and 2 for photo and video. If you're only doing photography, I'd recommend 3 packages to not overwhelm your couples with options. Package number 1 will be your most expensive package. It should include everything that you offer. The idea is to place it up at top to create a lot of perceived value. When they look at your top package and it's $9,000, all of a sudden that $3,000 package below looks like an incredible deal. Make sure that the packages and prices scale out correctly. The deal for them should get better the more money that they spend. Package 2 should be the package that most couples get. For me, it's an 8-hour day and a digital gallery. You can include albums, engagement sessions, or whatever else your ideal couples are interested in. I include an engagement session in my package 2, but in the next chapter, I'm going to be touching on the challenges and changes I'm seeing with engagement sessions. By the time you're reading this, I might drop them and make them an add-on. Package number 3 should be a very small package. For me, it is 4 hours and a gallery. That's it. If you're posting a starting rate on your website, this will be the rate that you start at, so make it attractive. It's also important not to make the jump from starting rate package to package 2 an extreme amount. Couples know when they inquire that the price they're seeing is a basic package. If what they want and need is actually $4,000 more, they're going to be a little bit upset. But on the other hand, if you start at $1,900 and package 2 is $2,900, that makes a lot of sense. One trick that I've learned is rather than raising prices all the time, that you can remove product. So as bookings start to come in, you start to remove product and services rather than actually raising the dollar amount. So rather than increasing that $2,900 number, you just remove the album it came with, or you can remove the engagement session. That way you're making more money on each of those packages, but you're not putting yourself at a price point that might not work in your area. The easiest way to get your starting rate is to look around town and see what others are charging. The market is already set, and it's much easier to go with an established market than try to do something unique and battle against it. Chapter 8, Gear. Personally, my equipment is always changing. It's because I review gear on YouTube. You do not need to change cameras as often as I do. I was on Nikon digital SLRs from 2005 until 2020, then Canon for a year, then Sony for a year, now a mix of Canon and Sony. Nikon lagged behind the switch to mirrorless, which is why Canon and Sony became my choices, but they have quickly caught up. So is Fujifilm's autofocus. The good news is that every brand has good gear, and you can shoot a wedding on any brand. Just because you see someone on the internet doing great work with a particular brand does not mean that you have to switch to that brand to also create great work. Camera bodies are also coming out very often now. If you're interested in my current product thoughts, head on over to my YouTube channel or search for Taylor Jackson Photo on YouTube. I typically do an updated gear video every 6 months or when something new and important is released. Again, just because that's what I'm using doesn't mean that you have to use it. Even looking back to 2017, there are cameras produced then that are still up to professional standards. What the switch from digital SLR to mirrorless has done is made a lot of our lives very easy. Eye autofocus is so good now that you almost don't even have to try. Just point the camera in the direction of someone and make sure they're composed correctly. The camera will do the rest. With mirrorless, you can also see the final image on the EVF or the LCD screen, which makes life a lot better. In addition, I'm now comfortable shooting in aperture priority mode with auto ISO. Back in the digital SLR days, this is not something that I would have considered. If you've watched some of my older YouTube videos, I talk a lot about shooting manual mode for camera settings to speed up my editing workflow. The more consistency you can have between images, the faster you can edit them. Now with AI editing, that doesn't really matter so much. Small exposure changes in camera can quickly be corrected with no extra time by you spent editing. So camera bodies will constantly be changing, but my lenses will stay a little bit more consistent. I am a person that prefers prime lenses to zoom lenses. A prime lens is a fixed focal length and does not zoom. The benefit is that you can work in lower light environments and you can create shallower depth of field. Also, the soft out of focus backgrounds look a lot more dreamy and, in my opinion, make your wedding photos look better. That said, I do use zooms when the time is right, so I will talk about them as well. Since I'm shooting lenses that don't zoom most of the time, I have two camera bodies with me. One has a primary lens and one has a wider lens. I use full frame cameras. My main lens cycles between an 85mm lens and a 50mm lens, and my second camera body typically has a 35mm lens, a 24 or a 20 on it. If I have an 85mm lens on my primary camera, typically I'll have a 35 on my second camera, or if my main lens is a 50mm, my second camera will have a 20 or a 24mm lens. I set up an easy button on the top of my camera to go from full frame into APS-C mode. What this does is allows me to get that extra reach from those lenses. For example, a 50mm lens in APS-C crop mode is a 75mm field of view. The crop will come at the expense of some megapixels being lost, but I'm okay with that. I find a 24 megapixel camera to be just about right for me for weddings. I don't need much more than that. You can make big prints and crop when required. I also used a 20 megapixel camera for a season, and I found it to be totally fine. I don't think you need to spend the extra money to get super high megapixel cameras for wedding photography. So if you're shooting a 24 or maybe a 33 megapixel camera, APS-C crop mode will likely get you somewhere around 14 megapixels. So don't shoot in crop mode all day, but to get a little bit closer at times, it's excellent. If you ever get in a pinch, Adobe has a great upscaling feature that will do a good job of increasing the size of your photos. Getting back to lenses, I never really find myself needing much wider than a 35mm lens on a wedding day. I always have my 20mm lens in my bag as a backup, but I only use it for a few photos a day. There are also photos that I could easily make work with a 35 if needed. 90% of my images come from my primary lens and 10% or less come from that second body. Sometimes my second body is the same camera model as my main body, but it's usually the one that I've just upgraded from. Keep the same brand if possible, just so you can use lenses on both. Even if you aren't shooting two cameras, a wedding photographer must have a backup camera, even a third backup camera if you have one to bring. They all don't have to be top of the line. Your third backup camera can just be an old DSLR that you have, but you might as well bring it. Wedding days are super long and sometimes strange things happen to gear, so please have backups of gear. It's also critical to bring backups of lenses. Typically, I bring 2 primes and 1 zoom to a wedding day. If a 50mm lens is going to be my main lens, I'll also bring the 24. And then the zoom depends on the camera brand. Sony, well, technically Tamron has a bit of a unicorn. The Tamron 35 to 150 f2 to f2.8. It is a lens that I could shoot an entire wedding day on, but sadly at the time of writing, it only exists for Sony. If I'm on Canon or Nikon, I will bring a 70 to 200 f2.8 rather than that Tamron lens. This lens is my lens for most wedding ceremonies. I will use it for speeches during the reception if the space requires it. But typically for speeches, I'll be using the 85mm f1.4 lens and shooting ambient now. As long as the quality of light is good, I'm happy to go up to ISO 8000 on most of the newer cameras. To talk a little bit about f-stops, my favorite lenses are usually f1.4 lenses. The smaller the number, the shallower and creamier the out-of-focus background will be. I find that f1.4 gives me the best balance of cost versus quality versus weight, weight being the most important factor for me. Some brands only make an f1.8 or f1.2 lenses, And this kind of bothers me because it's a business decision and they leave out the 1.4 intentionally to force you to go to the 1.2 and spend the extra money, but then you have to carry the excess weight of it. The f1.4 lens for me is the best choice when it exists, whether it's an 85 millimeter lens, a 50, a 35, or even a 24. With zooms, most of them will start at f2.8, which is good enough for low light most of the time, but doesn't always give me the background separation that I want. My lens choices are personal preference. Look at some reviews and see what stands out to you. For my camera bag, I like to be able to carry everything with me, so I use a Peak Design Everyday Messenger bag. It is a 13-liter bag that fits everything that I need. One pocket is my second camera with the wider lens. The middle pocket is my zoom lens, either the Tamron or the 70-200 f2.8. And then the third pocket is my flash. With the switch to mirrorless, a lot of flash systems have become a little bit weird. I currently use a Godox V1 as my main flash. It seems to work with most of my cameras. I don't use the automatic TTL modes, and I shoot everything in manual flash power. I rarely find myself going up over 1/4 power on a wedding day with it, and the batteries will last multiple weddings if used that way. I also have a filter set for my flash, an orange and a green filter. Orange is to match my flash to incandescent lights. Green matches it a little bit closer to fluorescent bulbs, though it is never perfect. I have a small hot shoe flash trigger if I need to do off-camera flash work. If you're interested in learning more about my off-camera flash, head on over to taylorjacksoncourses.com. You can check out my off-camera flash for wedding photographers video set there. I have a simple light stand in my car, just one that I got from Amazon if I do need to go off camera. And whatever flash you're considering, just make sure it works with your camera body. Other things that I bring to wedding day, extra batteries, extra cards, that's it. Everything fits in my messenger bag and is light enough to carry around all day. By not bringing a roller case with additional gear, I can also be more mobile. I'm also less of a target for theft or somebody moving a bag to a place where I can't find it. For me, I like to keep my kit the most minimal I possibly can. The fewer choices I have for gear, the more I can actually stay in the moment. Again, this is all just what I do and doesn't have to be 100% right or wrong for you. Chapter 9, Engagement Sessions and Their Decline in My Business. I want to preface this again by mentioning that this is all from the perspective as a business owner and what I see here outside of Toronto in Canada. I've heard similar feedback from others in the USA, Europe, and Australia. Something I've noticed personally in my business is fewer engagement sessions every year. I started noticing this around 2018. Up until 2018, pretty much all of my couples did an engagement session with me. It was in their package and they thought it was part of the wedding experience. Since then, I've noticed that more and more couples don't want them. There are probably several reasons for this, but in no particular order. I see the most common ones here. My couples are into travel and usually do a short session wherever they get engaged, assuming it's a travel destination. Next, they use the engagement session as a bargaining chip with a friend offering to shoot their wedding for free. The couple doesn't want them to, so they agree to allow them to do the engagement session instead. Next, they just think that engagement sessions are dumb and weird and fear how uncomfortable they will be. And next, to save money, to put a little bit more towards hours or other services. This trend might also come down to the fact that your ideal couples are probably pretty similar to you. For example, I'm very introverted, and the idea of doing an engagement session doesn't really seem like a lot of fun to me either. If one partner is into the idea of engagement session, usually the other will agree to it. But if the leading partner of the conversation says that they don't want one, there is never a rebuttal from the other partner. My engagement session rate is around 30 to 40% this year, and I don't think that I will see a resurgence of them anytime soon. From a business perspective, yes, they are money. However, I find them to be a bit annoying for my schedule. We'll discuss this more in a chapter about building your dream business. To briefly touch on the dream business lifestyle here, they're a calendar event that requires me to be at a specific place at a particular time. They're also an event that tends to be rescheduled often for weather or for family events coming up. In the early years of my career, I did everything I could to get out and shoot. If a couple said that they didn't have the budget for an engagement shoot, I would include one for free. Now, many years later, I'm able to reclaim a little bit of that time. For years 1 through 5, shoot as much as you can. Then in years 5 through 20, figure out what makes you the happiest and start tailoring your business to it. More on that later in the book. Engagement sessions are a great way to build your skills as a photographer. They're a great test run for your couples. They see what they like and what they don't. That way, their wedding day goes a lot more to their expectations. If your communication skills are lacking, like mine are, they're also a great way to get you more comfortable. A wedding day photo session is simple when compared to an engagement session. At a wedding, it's a more exciting day. There's more going on to distract your couples, more friends and family around to make them feel comfortable. Plus, a photo session is just kind of standard. Engagement sessions, especially the first few, are difficult. They're awkward, just the three of you meeting up in the parking lot and going to take pictures. What I found to help get myself and my couples comfortable was to pick an activity. Maybe the engagement session starts at a pub or they do a picnic, anything to take the full pressure off of me. My ideal engagement session would be something pretty much entirely photojournalistic, but again, that's right for me. And just because it's right for me, it doesn't have to be right for you. If I could just document my couples during an experience of some sort, that would be the most comfortable place for me. My dream would be to follow them along a touristy day at a location that means something to them, wine tasting, skiing, walking around New York. But if you enjoy setting up lights and long gowns and that type of thing, that is totally fine as well. For me, though, this is my typical engagement session. They're about an hour long, so we pick a spot to meet up, ideally somewhere that has a little bit of city and a little bit of greenery that we can use. If you have a Pinterest mood board with some outfit samples that you like, send them to your couple. Usually, the more well-dressed they are, the more professional feeling that the images will come out. I ask my couples to bring a change of clothes for halfway through. We either start in something more dressy and switch into more casual, or the other way around. There's no official rule. I ask to see what they brought at the start so I can plan the locations in my mind. If they show up in something that's going to go great against green space and their second outfit is very city, I want to make sure we're in the right spot with the right outfits. I will meet my couples in a parking lot or a location a few blocks from the first spot that I know that I want to shoot. Walking with them, I give them a little bit of a breakdown on how I do things. My script usually goes something like this. I'm not going to pose you too heavily. The images will come out great if you're just happy, close to each other, and having fun. If you're doing something weird, I will let you know, but I'm not going to pose you like you're in a school photo. If you have ideas, feel free to shout them out. There's no template for what an engagement session is, and these photos are for you and your family, so whatever you'd like, I'm happy to help create. A script like that does several things. First, it takes a lot of pressure off of you. It's now a collaborative effort rather than you telling them what to do. If I take control and pose something in the first few minutes of a shoot, they will look at me to do that for the rest of the session, and the images won't really be that personal. Next, that script lets them know that there's no pressure to complete a checklist for an engagement session, that a checklist doesn't exist and the photos are whatever you want them to be. There's more about my posing style in the Introvert's Guide for Wedding Photography Posing at taylorjacksoncourses.com, but I will summarize a few things here. I do my best to keep people moving for the entire session. If we stop for too long, we all get a bit uncomfortable. I take a lot of walking photos, and I usually start with these. I find that walking is the easiest way to get couples to feel comfortable quickly. If you ask them to smile and face the camera, no one knows what to do with their hands, but if they're walking, they just kind of seem to know what to do. Walking photos also give a nice variety in a short amount of time, starting with them walking towards you holding hands, then ask to put an arm around each other, then stop and smile and face towards the camera for that boring photo that all their family's going to want, then keep walking. It's also a big key for me and my introverted couples to avoid big crowds. I do my best to pick locations that will be pretty empty when we are there. This practice relaxes everyone, and if we have no choice but to be in a busy downtown, I'm always looking for small spaces that we can get away from other people. My couples appreciate this, and they are much more themselves. My goal with engagement sessions is to get my couple to be themselves as fast as possible. If they want to stop and get ice cream, I want them to say that. Another tip is that if you're in a spot where you can leave bags and change of clothes in car, do it. Bring valuables with you, but anything that can stay in the vehicle should stay. I get a larger messenger bag so I can hold things like their keys, wallets, phones, so they're not in their pockets. If you've ever done a shoot with a bag of clothes, you know how much it impacts the flow of a fast-paced shoot by putting down the bag and picking it back up. It's a small thing, but it makes everything feel a lot more intentional, and I'd rather everything feel more candid and organic. Switching up clothes halfway through also is a nice break from taking pictures. Park near a washroom that they can change in, or a lot of couples are just fine getting changed in and around their vehicle. If it makes sense, you can also do a location change at this point. For planning in actual locations, I usually ask a couple at the first meeting if they have a spot in mind. If not, I can suggest a few. Some couples want to recreate their first date, and others just want some nice photos of them, and it doesn't matter where. I do many sessions in the same locations because I know those spots work very, very well for me in any weather conditions. I don't mind repeating these conditions for strangers, but if this couple was in the wedding party of another couple, I make sure I don't reuse the spot. For gear, my preferred lens is usually what my friend Manny Ortiz and I call the introvert lens, an 85 millimeter, usually f1.4, and I'll shoot it pretty much at 1.4 for the entire shoot. I will also have a 35 millimeter lens with me, as well as a second camera body. I use full frame camera bodies. A 50 millimeter lens is also a great option. And I know a lot of wedding photographers that use them for a session like this and even entirely for some wedding days. Aesthetically, I really like the look of shallow depth of field that primes can give. But if you would prefer something like a 24 to 70 f2.8, that is fine as well. My advice for gear is to bring as little as you're comfortable with. Rolling a bag around with 10 other lenses just slows you down. Changing lenses also slows the shoot down. That's why I use 2 camera bodies with primes. I shoot all in manual mode, though aperture priority is fine. And I'll actually shoot through my setup process when I'm changing settings in manual mode. I'll just begin taking pictures because sometimes underexposing a scene or overexposing a scene opens up a new angle or idea that you didn't see before. After the shoot ends, I like to give them a bit of a timeline depending on the time of year. They'll see their photos in a week or two, and I do my best to deliver 3 or 4 days before I promised I would. In the first meeting, if a couple is very nervous about doing photos on the wedding day, I will always suggest doing an engagement session as a warm-up. That way we have a chance to work together before the wedding day. They'll be more comfortable and confident with both themselves and my work. If you're someone that likes to travel a lot, engagement sessions are also a straightforward way to start building your travel and destination portfolio. During the first meeting with my couple, I usually ask if they're traveling anywhere soon. If they are and schedules can align, I will do my best to make a destination engagement session happen. At the beginning of my career, I wasn't charging anything extra for them. The value and the credibility that came with a shoot of that style did enough good for me, and I was just happy to have the experience. Now, obviously, things have changed a little bit. To summarize, there is no official outline to what an engagement session has to be. Make your engagement sessions something that your couple can be themselves in, but don't bring too much gear and try to have some fun. Chapter 10, Proposal Photography. Proposal photography is also an element of a wedding photography business sometimes. You're there to document a proposal, but one of the partners usually doesn't know. Sometimes they both know. It's a bit weird. These booking requests come in all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're relaxed and easy. Sometimes they're very extravagant. I'll talk about the 2 that I see most commonly in my career. The first is the easiest. You're hired to do a photo session with a couple, and one of the partners plans to propose during that photo session. This situation is easiest because it's not weird that there's a photographer there around them, and it's straightforward to document from your side. The second is a little bit harder. Usually it's a public location and a time is set to be the spot. So you as the photographer hang out in that spot and try to not look like a photographer waiting for a proposal, which is usually weird because you have a gigantic big lens. Before iPhones would share GPS tracking, this was a bit of a pain. Couples would run late and you'd be stressing out as a photographer. Am I in the right spot? How long do I wait? Do I leave? What time do I stay until? Now, I recommend just doing a location share with the person that's organizing it. You have proper visibility on the location, which is a lot more stressful. Some of these proposals also have an engagement shoot element as well, especially when it comes to destination proposals. They get engaged, you give them some space. At some point, they come and say hi, then you go for a 15 or 20-minute photo session around the area. These are very high pressure situations, but if you do a good job, these usually turn into full wedding bookings. And while they're not a huge part of my business, I maybe receive 1 to 3 inquiries for this type of shoot per year. They are something that exists. And if you do a good job of it and you promote it on the internet, you're going to find that a lot more of them will end up in your email box. Chapter 11, Elopements and Micro Weddings. An elopement is a smaller wedding, usually consisting of a couple and maybe witnesses. In the past, it didn't really include a lot of family, but now it's starting to. In the past, they were also rooted in travel of some sort, running off to a fantastic destination to do something a little bit more unique than they could do at home. Over the years, though, that's shifted a little bit. Places like where I live in Toronto are starting to see elopements, even though we don't really have the fanciest scenery. Here, elopements are kind of turning into something else, micro weddings. I have an elopements and micro wedding course up over at taylorjacksoncourses.com. Members have access to if you're interested. It comes with pricing guides, website templates, and a lot more. Elopements come with a superpower for getting your business on the right track. That superpower is they usually happen within a few months of contacting you, whereas a typical wedding might be a year or 18 months away from the actual event. They will build your portfolio faster. Elopements and micro weddings also tend to look a lot more interesting. When you have a small group, you have a lot more options for the ceremony and the location that you want. You can get married at a coffee shop or a pub where you had your first date, or you can get on an airplane and drive out into the middle of the desert somewhere. For you as a photographer, these experiences will obviously attract new clients that are also interested in unique and exciting weddings. If you're fortunate enough to do some travel work early in your career, you'll also notice that a significant credibility boost comes to your business. You're no longer just a local wedding photographer. Instead, you're a wedding photographer that is now shot in LA, Banff, or Paris. The runway to attracting elopements is also a little bit shorter. Styled shoots in non-traditional wedding attire is the easiest way to show something like it in your portfolio. Whether it's elopements or complete weddings, it's important to show what you want to sell in your portfolio. Then couples that come to your social media or your website, they'll feel a connection to you, that you offer what they're looking for. Being able to visually show that rather than just words is much more powerful. The other plus is the elopements you shoot will also sell you full wedding days. So the good news is they happen closer to now. They're generally more fun to photograph, unique, and they'll book you future full weddings. The bad news is geography. Do you live in a place where elopements happen often? If so, you can quickly start and specialize entirely in elopements if you wanted to. Good locations are places that people fly to get married, destination locations. Where I live near Toronto, sadly, is not a location for that. So while there are some elopements now more than ever, there's still not a lot. If you want to start attracting elopements regardless of where you live, start creating valuable assets to help couples plan their elopements. We've started an entire sub-business here called Elopers & Co. Our friend Jeff Mack, he's an officiant. He leads this. He takes the incoming leads and puts together a day for the couple and then fills out the team with what they're looking for. Some couples want photos, some want photo and video. Some like my work better, some like my wife Lindsay's work. That's fine. We have a framework where they can quickly jump into it, and it takes all of the guesswork away from trying to plan this whole day themselves, and it passes it on to people that have done it before and specialize in it. To give an example of what these look like, we do helicopter elopements, and we hire the helicopter and make a package deal for the couple, or we'll do boats where we arrange hotels as part of the package, or simple one-day hikes to beautiful locations. All of these are very easy to market because they're very visual. Do I recommend starting an entire new business just for elopements like we did? No. What I do recommend is to come up and execute a few ideas for interesting wedding ceremonies and then create helpful guides around those if you are interested in elopements. It can be as simple as a long form blog post that gives some local elopement ideas and shows some sample images and connects them with more of the right people to make it happen. If there are advanced logistics, you can even partner with a planner to help make the events come to life. We've found that they're a bit easier to market as a team rather than just as a solo photographer. Elopements and micro weddings are a lot of fun, and they also tend to happen on non-weekend days, so you're not taking any availability away from your regular wedding business. I suggest being open to them and talking about your enjoyment of them on your website. When those thoughts connect to the right person, those sentences will make things happen. Another option is running paid ads to directly get in touch with potential couples on social media. We'll talk about that more throughout this book. Chapter 12, First Meetings and How to Get There. So how does the funnel to a first meeting look? It could begin on social media, or a friend might mention your name and share a link. Wherever the client journey starts, there's a good chance they will end up on your website to try to find your starting rate. The number one goal of your website is to get people to contact you. From the website side, this means giving your ideal couple no red flags. Instead, get them connected to your mindset as a photographer. For example, talk about why candid is best if you believe candid is best. All of your pages should get them one step closer to contacting you. Once they've filled out your contact form, your work in booking them will already be 80% done. When you get an email from that couple, respond right away. Let your couple know that you're available and you'd love to talk more. I've won many jobs by responding quickly, setting up a meeting that day, and booking the job before other photographers have even responded to the first email. Members over at taylorjacksoncourses.com also have access to all of my email scripts. I like to give them 2 or 3 options for meeting times that work for me. Make them strange times so they know that you're busy. 6:10 p.m. tonight, 11:30 a.m. tomorrow, or 8 p.m. the next day. It's likely that one of those times can work for them. I would resist the urge of having a considerable window of time available. In-person versus phone versus FaceTime. I personally prefer phone calls. I'm more comfortable on the phone, and my couples are as well. They are precisely as long as they need to be. I used to meet at coffee shops for most of my awkward meetings. First, you had to identify a couple you've never met before in public. You get pretty good at this, or you could have a camera or something on your table as an indicator. I'm just socially awkward, which is always a challenging start to a meeting. Then, there's the awkward part where one of them goes up to the order, and maybe that's a 3-minute process, maybe it's a 15-minute process if they're busy. Then, if they order something that takes some time to make, sometimes 15 or 20 minutes later, it comes to the table. I've been done several meetings by the time that drinks finally arrive. It's good if you're having great conversations and you want to spend an hour with your couple, but unfortunately, I'm not great at conversations and I find the bonus time difficult. In coffee shops, so much is out of your control as well. If you have a place to meet, it is better. I would also sometimes meet my couples at their home. However, this idea stresses some couples out, so don't suggest it as the only option. When it comes to sales, one of the key reasons to meet with a couple in real life would be to show them physical albums. I'll be talking more about albums on a later chapter. FaceTime and video calls are also great options. Everyone is comfortable enough with them now. Technical issues are rare. The only downside is that video calls feel like work to some people. You can prefer any meeting, but I enjoy phone calls. They're easy. The couple can be in their car driving somewhere, they can be at home. Same goes for me. Meeting preference has also come with the experience of working with my ideal couples for years. If your perfect couple would prefer to meet in person, I recommend that you meet in person. Talking in the same language will lead to faster trust and faster bookings. When it comes to first meetings, members at taylorjacksoncourses.com have access to 3 of my real recorded first meetings. Well, you don't have to follow any specific script for your first meeting. Here is my usual. I'll typically start a meeting by talking about how great their venue is if I've shot there before, something to give you expert status as well as reaffirm their decision to book there. Then I ask if they have a rough timeline for their wedding day, even if it's just a ceremony time. From there, I'll talk about my typical day. Typically, I'll be there from about an hour of getting ready and stay until a few songs into dancing. I then talk about my photography timeline. Next, I ask my couple if they're thinking about a first look. There is no right or wrong answer to that. If a couple is on the fence, I explain having one allows them to get to cocktail hour faster and spend more time with guests. Otherwise, cocktail hour is usually reserved for photos. I explain that I only need about 45 minutes for photography, 15 minutes with them, 15 with the wedding party, and 15 with family. 15 family minutes is usually good as long as it is a smaller list of family photos. It's nice to have a list of family photos from them so I can keep things efficient and organized. One of the common ways a family session goes wrong for me is when I have no list and a random aunt or uncle steps in and starts suggesting random family groupings. If I have a list to go from, that rarely happens. I ask for the list as well as if they could give a copy to someone that knows who everyone is. This way, no one can run away from cocktail hour when they know they're next for the photo. Having someone there to help out is great, and I've also found that somebody's just happy to do it. After that, I'll usually talk about sunset photos. 15 minutes again for that. I usually figure out the exact timing with the venue coordinator on the day. My goal is not to have that session impact any part of the dinner service, but also get them out at the right time. The right time is variable though. In some venues, you want direct sun. Some venues, it's a little bit better to be outside right after that moment. I explain that I always do the best that I can with the variables given to us on the day. Beyond those photo session parts of the day, the rest of the coverage is candid and as the day goes. At this point in the meeting, couples usually have a question or two that they've written down prior. The one that I hate the most is when couples ask me to describe my style. They pulled this from a what to ask your wedding photographer question list, and the question makes no real sense. They want to hear if you consider yourself a light and airy or dark and moody photographer. I answer the question anyways. I explain that my style adapts to the day and is primarily candid. I do my best to accentuate what I see while still being true to the day. I'm not going to make a beautiful light and airy room look dark and moody or the other way around. I want my photos to bring you back to the wedding day, to remember the in-between moments that passed so quickly on the day. They're usually pretty happy with an answer like that. I don't do any sort of high pressure or time sensitive close with my couples at the meeting. I want them to find the correct photographer for them, and if it's not me, that's fine. I end the meeting by leading the conversation about next steps. If they decide that they want to go forward, email me with the package they've chosen. I can do the contract online as well as a payment request, 50% to secure the date, with the 50% remaining 2 weeks before the wedding. This is usually around the time that we set the final schedule for photography. I also tell them that the package doesn't need to be locked in yet. If they want to change packages or add or subtract hours over the year, that is fine. We'll figure out what that looks like on the final payment. Well, I do know that I've left money on the table not trying to do that hard close at a meeting or say that they save the taxes if they book within the next 1 hour. I've never really felt right doing that. After the meeting, I'll usually get an email within a few hours saying that they'd like to move forward. Sometimes it's the next day. Before I had my prices listed publicly, the booking delay was more prolonged, maybe 3 to 5 days, sometimes weeks or months. It was actually common to get an email 3 or 4 months after a wedding meeting with a couple asking if I was still available. Another bonus about public pricing is that bookings often tend to happen without a single meeting. Instead, 2 or 3 messages back and forth, and some couples are ready to book. Chapter 13, Finding Ideal Couples. Ideal couples will make your life and business a lot better. The bad news is, if you're the first few years into your business, you're probably working for many of your non-ideal couples. For many of my first years, I wasn't hired as an artist or as tailor. I was hired as a button pusher and treated like one. I was there to push the buttons for 80% of jobs that I booked in the first 3 years of my business. The first years could have been a better time. I nearly quit the business entirely. My memories of that time period are that every wedding party was incredibly drunk and almost out of control. They were pushing over mailboxes outside the venue type behaviors. They were not respectful to anyone. The couple was a little bit more in control and trying to keep the day together for the most part, though. But the days were a challenge. The time was a challenging period in my life as well. I was 19 or 20 years old, and my couples were 25 to 30. The age gap to a person with average communication skills might have been easy to overcome. However, I felt like they were living in an entirely different world. After a few drinks, they got loud, and many of the groomsmen became bullies against the younger photographer who was clearly uncomfortable. So for a lot of weddings, I was the enemy. I was the person that was there to remove them from the bar and stand in front of a camera for some photos that they did not want to be in. While 80% of the weddings were hard, 20% were incredible. That 20% were weddings of my ideal couples. Most hired me because we'd met in the local music scene over the years, or at the very least had seen my watermark on images of their favorite band. Those weddings were incredible. We were on the same page regarding style of photos we wanted from the day and overall energy. They were excited to introduce me to their wedding party. They made me feel like an additional member of the wedding party, and I was treated as a friend, not as an enemy. Leading up to the wedding, the couple was always looking forward to doing an engagement session together. If for nothing else, it was to hang out a little bit before the wedding day. They were energetic and happy to be there, and the images always came out great. Engagement sessions would last longer for them, and we'd do a collection of weird activities. I'd go grocery shopping with them or to their family cottage. I was a friend with a camera. So now the question of how do you attract your ideal couple from the start and become a friend with a camera as fast as possible? It's a 3-step process. Step 1, create the work that would appeal to them. Set up shoots and start building your portfolio correctly. Eventually, the style of images that you're creating will organically start coming to you through paid bookings. Step 2, become your ideal client. Craft your entire public online identity to be similar to your ideal couple. This includes social media, your website, and videos. This is not just a one-day job. This is a job that's going to last your entire career. Step 3, add some paid ads to accelerate growth. I've made an entire chapter about paid ads because they are that important. More on that to come in this audiobook. The sad truth is, being able to take great photos is simply a prerequisite to running a business now. Well, I do know some world-class photographers that are artistic enough to book work entirely based on their images. They are the exception and not the rule. For the rest of us, we must learn to live the online persona that our ideal couples are attracted to. This doesn't have to be inauthentic to who you are, just a little more curated to the couples that you want to work with, more specifically curated to the decision maker. If you've already done a few wedding meetings with ideal clients, you may know generally who they are. If you can think of a few commonalities between yourself and them, you're off to a good start. Even if you haven't shot any weddings yet, it's time to think about it. Who would your ideal couple be? Maybe you have some friends that you'd love to work with over and over again. Look at what they post on social media and what they share. The more you can understand what is happening inside their heads, the easier it's going to be to connect with them. What are their likes? More importantly, what are their dislikes, especially when it comes to weddings? How do you frame their dislikes into problems that you're able to solve? For me, a big turning point was building a big how to plan your wedding in our local area guide. It talked about all the things that I didn't love to do at weddings, specifically when photo sessions are way too long, and that really seemed to connect with couples. Another key point was mentioning that I like when couples have a wedding because they want to get married and not because they want to have an elaborate photo shoot. Walked them through the process of my efficient family and couples photo sessions, and that also became something that a lot of couples mentioned in their first meetings. Then, a big one, a full chapter coming up in this audiobook as well, hybrid coverage. Photography and video as a small team were also a big way to connect with couples. They typically didn't want a big video team at their wedding, and they also didn't have the budget to pay for it. Photography to them was always important, and a simple highlight video was always an easy add-on. And once they saw their wedding day with this highlight video, it was difficult for them to look at another photographer since now they would also need to hire a video team. In my marketing and meetings, I would talk about video being the one thing that many couples regretted not getting. This echoes sentences that I'm sure that they've heard from friends that have recently also been married. From there, I started thinking of things I didn't love about wedding days and positioning them as a selling feature. At the time, many local photographers were offering full day coverage starting at the salon in the morning. This means that the gallery would open with a few hours of coverage with hair and makeup half done. So I included that in my guide, and it read something like this. While most of my photography is always candid, I don't think I have to be there from the start of getting ready coverage. Instead, I arrive an hour before your hair and makeup are to be completed. I start with the detail photos that I need and then turn to candids of everyone once hair and makeup are nearly final. Pushing against salon coverage also seemed to be attractive to my couples. They had probably also been at a wedding where the gallery started with 100 unflattering photos of hair and makeup not done. When I do getting ready coverage, I usually keep it a little bit more abstract until hair and makeup are final. This means shallow depth of field shots from behind, maybe focused on a hairpiece. While doing that, I ask the stylist to let me know when everything is finalized and we can do a few last brush strokes of powder for the photos. This stops me from creeping on the bride for an entire hair and makeup session. It also makes them more relaxed. The makeup artist also appreciates that you're not always in their space. Small things like the above can also be mentioned in blog posts and on social media to help connect with couples that appreciate that you've thought of that type of thing. Most people have had a negative experience with a wedding photographer or at least heard about one. So if you can disarm potential problems, you will just show them that you get it. After a few wedding days, you'll hear enough stories from the wedding party to start a pretty good list of things that you wouldn't want to do. So use them where you can. Within reason, don't be afraid to mention what you don't enjoy doing. Other photographers are afraid to because they think they'll lose out on a potential sale. What they don't realize is that by being so generic, that they're not attracting the sales that should be theirs. So create portfolio images similar to what your ideal couples will be looking for. Figure out what your couples enjoy and what they don't enjoy. Then craft an online presence that affirms their beliefs and bonds you against common enemies. Chapter 14, Getting Hired as a Second Shooter. Getting hired as a second photographer seems simple, but it's not. When I was first getting started, I emailed every photographer I could find within a reasonable radius of where I lived. I created 50 personalized emails and sent them out one by one. Only one photographer got back to me with a polite no. Every single other photographer just deleted the email. If you try the same, I hope you see better results. So let's start with why you would want to be a second photographer. It's to build experience with camera in hand on a wedding day. Some lead shooters will even allow you to use the images that you take in your portfolio. That sounds like a dream gig. Get paid, but also build your portfolio in a less pressure environment. These jobs, though, they're hard to find. If I could offer you any advice, it would be to form relationships with other photographers first. Most photographers are going to hire from their friends list and the people that they like first. After that, they'll get more adventurous with their selections. If you're a complete unknown to them, you will likely not get hired. If you do get hired, it's not likely going to be a job where you can also use the images for your portfolio. You do have a bit of an advantage that I didn't have: social media, Instagram. You can now start by getting your name out there and known to other photographers before sending them an email. With a bit of a warm-up, you'll see better results than a total cold call. Following photographers will also give you an idea of the ones that you actually want to be friends with, and those will be the best opportunities. Reaching out over the off-season will have mixed results. Some photographers don't want to be thinking about wedding season yet, and certainly have not started a schedule. Other photographers will already have a team in place for the next year. My advice would be to reach out early in the week during the wedding season, maybe on a Tuesday when the photographer might have an office day. If on social media you see that they're at a 5-day commercial shoot, do not reach out that week. Reaching out during wedding season will typically have better results than in the winter because busy photographers are usually a little bit disorganized, or they're just straight up too busy to be organized. Sometimes they forget to need second shooters, which will be a nice reminder when you drop into their email box. It's likely reaching out at this time might result in a job within the next month. The photographer may have had a second cancellation, or they just haven't hired anyone yet. Reaching out in the busiest months gives more of a chance for this. Here in Canada, June and September tend to be the busiest months. Where you live, it might be different. When you get hired for the first job, consider it a trial run. There are also no rules when it comes to second photographer arrangements. If you want to offer to shoot for free in exchange to be able to use the images in your portfolio, maybe that's something they would accept. On the other hand, maybe they would have a standard fee that they pay, and that's not even a consideration for week number 1. Even if the photographer looks like they know what they're doing and how to run a business, the truth is that we're all just making this up as we go. For the wedding day, ask the lead photographer what they're going to wear or what you should wear, and also get there early. Try to bring the gear that you need and nothing more. Some photographers will give you clear instructions, and some will just assume that you know what you're doing. A good second photographer typically finds their place or their angle. Limit shooting right over the lead photographer's shoulder, especially during family photos. For any group photos, lower your camera so everyone knows to be looking at the main photographer's camera. This might sound dumb, but one person will be looking at your camera while the rest look at the lead. Don't hover, but also don't disappear completely. Instead, find the image that you would like to have if it was your own wedding. As a second, you also have the time and ability to set up family photos for families at the event. This makes the photography coverage even more valuable to all the guests. During cocktail hour, you can ask some of the couples if they would like some photos in between your candid coverage. Then make a note of any couples on the wedding party and do the same. Learn to create valuable images that the lead photographer just doesn't have the time for. If it's a hot day, also bring them some water during family photos. It's small things that might get you hired back. I will advise that you don't overshoot on the day. Shoot what you need, but nothing more. If you're giving the lead photographer 9,000 frames from a 7-hour day, it's going to be very overwhelming. This said, don't delete anything in the camera. The problem with deleting in camera is a technical thing. I've only ever seen memory cards fail when images were deleted from them on the wedding day. Of course, the cards are always recoverable, but it is still scary. Most photographers will download the cards at the end of the night, or if you shot on their cards or gear, they'll just take it home. If you agree that you get to use some of the images, bring a method of getting those images rather than trying to ask them to come by at another time. Don't become another task for the photographer. Other things to be aware of: don't add the couple on social media and start tagging them. This will be seen as shady and you're trying to appear as the lead photographer to get referrals. If anyone asks what your company name is, it is the lead photographer's company name. Have some of their cards on hand to hand out if anyone asks. If someone asks for your Instagram, tell them the lead photographer's Instagram. I think adding vendors you meet, if you have a nice time with them, is okay, but ask your lead photographer first. Photographers are weird and the most random things will not get you hired back. Beyond all of this, have a good time, be a nice person to be around, smile, and represent the company well. Chapter 15, Albums. Albums can make you money. I don't sell albums. Not selling albums is a personal choice that took me many years to arrive at. I give my couples the images and the tools to make their books. I 100% believe in the value of printing and making books. I just don't want to be the one to do it. I understand that I'm leaving money on the table and that you don't have to be exactly like me. In the first years of my photography business, I sold albums to almost every couple. I'm going to talk about how I sold them, what worked, what I did wrong, then last, why I've transitioned away from selling them, even though I know that that is not a smart financial decision. Early on, I tried several album companies. Finally, I settled on a company called Fineo. Shopping for albums online is hard. I was fortunate enough to attend a photography convention called WPPI early on. I could see all the books from the different brands and I made my choice there. If you're near a larger convention like WPPI or Imaging USA, it might be worth checking out just to see all the physical products. With albums, there is a bit of a startup struggle. Once you print a sample book, it's hard to switch companies. After you meet with that couple and you show them the album, that is what they're expecting. There's also one other annoying thing in the early stages of business, that your portfolio is changing so often and evolving. When you print a book, That's your book for the year, or maybe 2 or 3 years. The good news is that most companies will give you a big discount on a few sample books every single year. My recommendation would be to print one, including various images from your portfolio, and then one album of your favorite standalone wedding. Software like Fundy Designer will make it easy to put together a nice layout, then have someone else look it over before it goes to print, since there are no changes. Be very cautious about having important details in the middle fold if you're doing a panorama style lay flat book. For terminology, a page is a page and a spread is 2 pages that lay flat together. In my experience, the more simple design, the better. I tend to do a maximum of 5 images per spread. I also tell my couples this so they know that they can't have 500 photos in a 30-page album. For what I offer, there are 2 options to keep it simple: a 30-page 12 by 12 inch book or a 30-page 10 by 10 inch book. I call the 10 by 10 inch book the parent book and the 12 by 12 inch book the couple's album. In my package, the largest package will include 1 book for the couple and 2 parent albums. They all have the exact same design. If they want different designs, there is a fee associated with that since it's a full redesign, even if it's just a few pages. For sales, there are a few upsell strategies. They always felt a little shady to me, to be honest. The strategy is this: a couple gets that 30-page book. They know additional pages are $150 each. You do a pre-design of the album after the wedding, but you make it 60 pages rather than 30. Then you ask them what they want to take away. Most couples can get rid of about 10 pages, but they'll leave the extra 20. Then you make an additional $3,000 on that sale. I've always hated the idea that my last interaction with the couple will be this. I know there are ways to frame it, that you're not the villain, but I will always feel uncomfortable doing it. I know thousands of photographers that run models like this and do it very well. I think in the USA, maybe it's a little bit more generally accepted. So there is money to be made, but I'm okay with sitting this one out. But again, you don't have to agree with everything that I say here. The idea of a pre-design does have value though. One of the biggest struggles with selling albums is getting your couple to select images for the book. Things will get done faster if you give them a pretty good starting point. There's also a camp that says, send me 40 to 50 of your favorite images whenever you're ready to start the album design process. That photographer knows that over half their couples will never do this and they'll keep the album money. In the contract, it will say something like you have 12 months to 2 years to send your selects in, otherwise the album is forfeited. I was more part of that camp, but I would never enforce the no album clause, even if the couple returned after 8 years. I say 8 years because that actually happened. That said, I would never follow up with anyone to make their selects. So the pros: albums are genuinely nice things for couples to have. I love when couples print their photos. Albums help beef up your top package and make it more expensive and your perceived value gets very high. Albums can definitely make you more money. Albums are a very easy way to get friends to show other friends their amazing wedding photos in the best way possible, getting you more referrals. For me though, there was a big negative, and it came down to my life happiness. There was one recurring theme in my business. During the last week of October, my wedding calendar was typically slowing down. I was looking forward to November being a more relaxing month. I would usually work hard the first week in November to get all of my October galleries out. I like to make sure that everyone has their wedding photos before the holidays. And then it would start. Album orders would begin to come in. I shoot a lot of weddings, sometimes up to 70 per year. Half of those couples got books, and half of them would send me selects in November, wanting their books before Christmas. It was very stressful to sort out 15 to 20 wedding albums designs, plus alternate parent book designs that late in the season. Plus, ordering 20 albums plus 10 parent books is expensive. Well, I wish I could say that I budgeted correctly and kept all the album funds in a second account. The truth is that I didn't. That part of the year would always set me up for a financially stressful holiday, looking forward to January and February when the bookings and the money would return. Fortunately, holiday cutoff times are usually pretty good for the actual album design, so you can usually order up until the second week of December and still get a book for Christmas. I took couples' addresses and had the books drop shipped to them, which is a risk because you have no chance for quality control, but there's also not really any time. Sure, if I was smart, I could outsource all of this and upcharge for it, but I never played it that well. I decided a few years ago, rather than raising my prices, I would take albums out of the package, more profit, and the numbers didn't have to get more expensive. If couples ask, I am happy to include an album for a cost, but since doing this 5 years ago, I have on average 2 to 3 couples asking yearly for an album, a much more manageable number as a studio that I am technically the only employee of. So if you want couples to buy albums, that's great. If they're not for you, that is fine as well. Your wedding photography business can be whatever you want it to be. Whatever makes you enjoy your business the most is probably the correct choice for you. Chapter 16, developing a style. In my first 2 years as a wedding photographer, I had 10 different styles. I really just didn't know what I liked best. I wanted to do it all. By year 3, I figured it out. In the beginning, I think this is fine. If you want to turn this into a career, though, it's time to tighten up your style. It's nice to know that if I go back to images from year 3 of my business, they still look fine in my portfolio today. Sure, fashion has changed, but overall, they still fit with what I'm doing. For wedding photography, I think that this is incredibly important. We are creating work that needs to be timeless so that when a couple looks back on their wedding photos 50 or 60 years from now, I don't want them to remember editing trends or TikTok trends. I want them to easily be transported back to the memory of that day. I think that's why great candid work is so important to me. For style, here's what you're not told. You can just pick one and get good at it. Your style doesn't have to find you, and you certainly don't have to wait for it. What does take time is figuring out what you like. A lot of photography is misleading. You see an image that you like, but why do you like it? Is it the subject, the pose, the lens, the light, or is it the editing? It's probably a combination of all of these elements. I think when a lot of people think of style, we think of the Lightroom preset. P.S. My presets are available to members, taylorjacksoncourses.com. Your style is not an editing preset, though it can be an element of it, especially when it comes to the color palette. So the good news, your style can be learned. You can manufacture your style. The bad news is you have to figure out what you like and you have to stick to it for a while. The other bad news, if you're looking at world-class photographers' work and really in love with it, you're likely seeing a lot of years of working with their ideal couples. The locations, the dresses, the decor, they're not likely things you're going to have access to within the next few years. This is why photography workshops and setting up your own shoots are very important to be able to showcase the style that you want to showcase and not be pushed in the direction of your early bookings. So step 1 to finding your style is to start collecting inspiration. Figure out what you like. Think about why you like it. Don't emulate one exact person, but rather a collection of small things that you like from many different photographers. I know that might sound easy, but it's not easy. It takes time and effort. It's also about surrounding yourself with this work on some level, following Instagram accounts and filling your visual senses with it as often as possible. Step 2 is to go deeper and figure out how they all fit together. You've collected all these images and work that you love. Now it's time to find the commonalities. See what you're globally drawn to across all of the work that you're looking at. Reverse engineer images and start to figure out all of the tiny micro decisions that went into making this image come out how it did. Take your time with it. Is it the lighting, the colors, the locations? Is it the posing or the lens selection? There are some things you control now and others that you might not be able to. There are a lot of places within photography that you can go. You can gravitate towards very artistic images or very photojournalistic ones, very posed and studio lighting, or in a field at sunset. It's also important to consider that there's a market for this work as well. While you may enjoy only shooting black and white documentary style photos all day, are there enough people that would want coverage in that style? If you're in a big city, maybe there is. However, if you're in a smaller rural town, it might not connect. Step 3, now build an outline for yourself. It might be helpful to think about it as if you have to teach someone how to create this style that you've curated. You've brought all these photographs together and they make a nice body of work, but how do you contribute to this body of work? I would begin with the technical. If you notice lenses repeating, I would start there. If everything you gravitate towards has a shallower depth of field or a shot on 85 millimeters or longer, that's one of the first pieces. If a number of images that you've selected are close up with wide angles, maybe 35 millimeters or 24 millimeters is a good place to start. Create a list of poses and scenes that you can create with couples on wedding days. One tip I got from Sam Hurd is that you can take pictures of these inspiration images on your camera before going to a shoot. That way you're able to review them easily by hitting the right arrow when previewing other images. Just make sure to format your card first. That way the inspiration images will be the first ones on your card and easy to review during the shoot. You can also do this with your phone, but it's a little bit more professional to stay looking at your camera. If you're like me and sometimes can't explain what you want your couple to do, you can always show them. In that case, save some images on your phone, Well, it might feel like you're copying someone else. It rarely ends up being that similar. Even if the posing is roughly the same, the elements and the people are always going to be different. Now, a bit of a gray area to talk about. I've noticed some photographers who look at other photographer style and only try to be that one single photographer. Some of these copycats are very successful. The photographer a couple's looking to hire only exists in one place in the world, so that photographer can only book so many weddings in a year. Well, I recommend not doing this. It is to be pointed out that it can work. More importantly, the point here is that you don't have to create a style that is 100% unique for you to succeed. That if you can fall into a bit of a bucket, it will actually help you book some work. Some couples are looking for that light and airy photographer, and if you fit, there's a good chance that you'll be hired. So don't feel like you have to make 1 million photos before your style will magically find you. Instead, you can actively create your style by combining already existing work of others and filtering it through your mind. It's going to come out as something that you really enjoy making. Chapter 17, Travel and Destination Work. It won't take long for you to be overcome with the desire to travel and do destination wedding work. It's built into the core of the industry, and it's often how a lot defines success. Going back to the chapter on social status, destination work is a game that a lot of the industry is playing. To be seen as successful by peers and by couples, shooting in other places is the easiest way to do that. I noticed this very early on in my career. I got started in music and concert photography, both because I enjoyed it and because it allowed me to hang out with interesting people. Making them look cool in photos gave them social status and made them want me around more. One of the bands I worked with often was about to record a new record. We all lived just outside of Toronto, but they chose to make the 8-hour drive to record in New York City. The producer had done a record for a band called At the Drive-In, and the band that I was working with wanted a little bit of that sound from their album In Casino Out. So they wanted to play everything live off the floor, just like a live show to capture that energy. For me as a photographer, this sounded like a dream. So we loaded into their green spray-painted mini school bus and drove overnight to Brooklyn. We slept on the floor in the studio. I'm unsure if it was because the band spent all their money on recording or if better art is created in struggle. Then the question is, do you intentionally put yourself in struggle to make better art? Maybe that question's out of scope of this audiobook. The trip was the most fun that I'd had with a camera. I was there to document, and we all felt this record was going to be really big. It was a feeling you get just before you check the lottery ticket winning numbers, and you have the ticket and you know that it's a winner. I spent one of the afternoons taking the train into Manhattan and sitting on the observation deck at 30 Rockefeller Plaza from 3 p.m. until dark. I sat up there thinking that I couldn't believe that a camera was why I was here. Sure, the band liked me enough, but I could also create something of real value for them. I think that was one of the big tipping points in my career, both mentally and as a business. When we returned to Canada after that trip, other bands saw my work with them, and suddenly everyone wanted me to shoot their band promo photos as well as come to their concerts. I was not a better photographer than I had been the few weeks before. However, I just had a lot more status and credibility now. It works in music and it works in weddings. One amazing destination wedding unlocks more amazing destination weddings. The trick is unlocking that first opportunity. I got lucky with my first destination wedding and it found me. Unfortunately, this is not usually how it works. What a destination wedding is for us, at least here in North America, is a trip to an island in the sun down south. That said, a destination wedding is technically any wedding that you would travel for. I had become a decent enough photographer in the Toronto area, maybe 4 or 5 years into my real career at this point. I had done 2 weddings in Canada on a beach that kind of looked something Caribbean-ish. I had these images on my website, which I think is the only reason I got this Mexico inquiry. They contacted me saying they were having a destination wedding with 30 other friends, and they were interested in bringing me along to take the pictures. They were local to me. The big thing I've noticed with destination weddings is that couples want to meet in real life before booking. This also may have been because I was so early in my career that the trust wasn't there yet. We picked a local coffee shop to meet up at, and here everything should have gone wrong. Earlier, I had taken some advice that if you're doing a destination wedding, you're out of the studio for 3 to 5 days and you should charge appropriately. I went in with a package that was way too high, and surprisingly, they said yes. Had I realized how much good that single wedding was going to do for my business, I would not have risked it with such a highball offer. Knowing what I know now, I would be 100% willing to do the first one for cost. You don't have to agree if you still want to charge properly for your first destination. That is fine. I got on the airplane with the wedding guests, and it was an ideal couple. They were there to have a fun time and included me in conversations and activities. Before we landed, I had made friends with a few of the people at the wedding, and the week was leading up to be a nice time. On the wedding day, I discovered some new challenges, shooting in really cold air conditioning and then entering a hot and humid environment. Apparently, this fogs up your lenses. After my lenses stopped fogging up, the pictures went really well though. I returned to my room around 10 p.m. and backed everything up, made some blog edits, and went to sleep. 2 days after the wedding, we went out to do an early sunrise session on the beach in their wedding clothes. While the wedding day, the images were great, these were the portfolio images. I love that the couple was also so into waking up early to get those great images. To this day, a second shoot is always something I try to get my couples to do. When you can plan the day around lighting and the best location to be at the right time, photos come out incredible. Returning home with this new portfolio, I was taken a lot more seriously by other vendors and couples. As lame as it sounds, I was just no longer a local photographer. I made a properly SEO'd blog post about that wedding and returned to the same venue 3 or 4 more times over the next few years. Beyond that, couples considering that venue would sometimes find me and bring me along to a destination wedding at another venue when they had finally decided. The other great thing about destination weddings is that destination wedding couples tend to be friends with other destination wedding couples. So if you do a good job, it's likely you'll be invited back to the same group again with someone else from the group getting married. 4 years now, destination weddings have been a key part of my business, and I've done over 50 of them. I was fortunate to get contacted to shoot my first one, but unfortunately, this isn't the normal way things go. Normally, your first destination, you have to work for. If you have friends or friends of friends getting married somewhere interesting, try to make it work out for them. In the scope of an island down south destination wedding, we realized that we actually usually save the couple money by going. Typically, if they book a big group, they're given a few free flight and hotel credits, usually for the photographer, and they use one themselves. The hotel photography packages are usually expensive and challenging. Pricing models are a lot different up here, as well as photography styles. Couples that would like nice pictures are usually easily convinced that it makes sense to bring somebody that they trust. There have also been a weird number of opportunities to book destination weddings while we've been on vacation. You start talking to someone and you find out they're there for a wedding. A few minutes later, the couple comes by to say hi to them. At this point, if you offer to take some wedding pictures or a 2-day after picture session, they might say yes. We've extended this offer a few times, and either they turn into weddings or family session bookings. Another option is to find local models or couples that are open to doing a photo session, offer to pay them. You can bring a dress or you can have them do their own wardrobe. Instagram is usually the best place to find people, or if it's a bigger location you're traveling to, you might be able to get in touch with a modeling agency. Another twist we've done with this is creating content with hotels. There's a full course over at taylorjacksoncourses.com on this. And the basics are that you get in touch with the hotel first, and they offer to set you up with a place to stay, as well as some money, depending on the package they go with. Then they actually help you set up shoots with couples for portfolio shoots around their hotel. This is the easiest way to get a turnkey experience for a great shoot and a great experience. They also tend to upgrade you to the nicest room available and give you some nice bonus other extras over your stay. If you're interested in doing destination work, there are many different ways to go about it. The most important thing to do is to make a goal to book your first. Once you have one to show, things get a heck of a lot easier. So do everything you can to book that first one. Then set up shoots with families and other couples, and even film some of your own promotional content when on location. Fully maximize your time while you're there to make sure that you get to go back for a second destination wedding shortly after. Destinations are fun to do and bring your at-home business even more credibility. When an at-home couple knows that another couple flew you to their wedding in an entirely different location, they're going to trust you so much faster. Chapter 18, Hybrid Coverage. Hybrid coverage is doing both photography and video at the same time on a wedding day. I'm not going to focus too much on this book about hybrid coverage, but it is something that has transformed my business. Over 70% of my couples go with a photo and video package, and I know it's why a lot of my couples choose me. I'm not hiring this video coverage out to a subcontractor. I'm doing it all internally, either with just myself or myself and a second photographer. My top package also includes a dedicated cinematographer. That package comes with full ceremony and speeches coverage. But if I'm being honest, I don't like selling that package. I feel like when I have both a second photographer and a video person on site, I feel like I become more of a manager than an actual creator. There are also so many more variables to troubleshoot when doing full photo and video coverage. In addition, audio presents several challenges as well. So now that I've prefaced this with a little bit about what I don't like doing, here is what I like to do. Simple highlight films set to music. When I first started doing videos, it was for the challenge. I felt bored only doing photography coverage, which started me doing a 30-second to 1-minute highlight for fun. At the time, I was limited by technology. For example, you couldn't switch between photo and video modes fast enough. Technology fortunately soon caught up and allowed me to expand that. I was now able to shoot a 2 to 3 minute highlight film. What I noticed very quickly was how happy all my couples became. They were always happy with their photography, but this took them to a whole new level of happiness. The first year, I was just surprising my couples with a highlight film. I made it a goal not to take anything away from their photography coverage. The highlights were primarily candid moments in slow motion throughout their wedding day. Slow motion is a key for me. The first reason slow motion is great is the subjective one. For me, I feel like it's aesthetically more pleasing. Couples get to see life a little bit differently and they get to slow down. Maybe you like regular speed footage better, and that's totally fine. I prefer slow motion. The second reason slow motion is great is that it technically needs to be to make a 3-minute highlight film while also doing photography coverage as one person. I shoot everything at 60p, which means 60 frames per second. Then when I put it on a timeline to edit, I set it to 24 frames per second, 24p, which means that for every 1 second of 60p footage I've shot, I get 2.5 seconds of footage in the final edit. So a 2.5-minute highlight film is actually only 1 minute of wedding day footage, and when framed like that, it seems very achievable to create. Well, it does take some time to get good at video. The good news is you already understand lighting, you understand lenses and the flow of a wedding day, and that's a big start, but it's also important to learn technique. I have a few courses over for members at taylorjacksoncourses.com. Another way to get good at video is to offer to second shoot for friends for free to make a highlight portfolio video. This can be your film school. Make sure the couple doesn't have a video team hired first. They'll appreciate the film and you'll make your friend look like a rock star by getting them a free wedding video. Kind of like business, learning video is a lot about learning what you don't use. In the first videos, you're going to shoot everything. Then you'll realize that you only really need 2 or 3 shots of reception details and none of the family formals ever made the final edit. The next time, you won't waste your time filming them. Your highlight film game will get tighter in the shoot, which means editing will get a lot faster. Typically, a highlight film takes me about 1 to 2 hours to edit, which I think is a very reasonable addition to your workflow. When I started charging for them, it was a flat $1,000 fee. Then eventually I raised my price as my quality and confidence grew. One thing that is still a problem for me is timing of the schedule. If you get a 4-hour wedding day, doing both photography and video is really challenging. In those cases, I usually bring in someone dedicated to help me out. While it is possible to do the highlight and photography coverage as one person on a condensed day, I was never really happy with the final product. Half of my couples chose to add a highlight film within the first few years of starting them. My volume of weddings was also going up. If I had a first meeting with a couple, it was a 90% booking rate. They couldn't really shop around at the same price point and get both photography and video coverage. If you are year 1 into wedding photography, I don't think it's a time to consider going hybrid. However, once you have your wedding day workflow down, it might make sense to see if it's a fit. Collecting clips from the weddings that you have now will make your future marketing efforts easier. While it is nice to have some full highlight films to show couples, it's equally important to show them that you've been to many different weddings. Therefore, a promotional video highlight film that includes many different couples is a valuable sales tool. Looping back to destination weddings, you become even more desirable for destination weddings when you start shooting hybrid. Now they just need you and you're able to give them both photography and video. I do recommend bringing a second to help out though. The additional benefit of video is that it makes you an even more well-rounded commercial shooter. Pretty much all of my commercial photography jobs, I was doing both photography and video for last year. Maybe it was a full video production or maybe it was just some social content. Either way, I could charge more and make the clients happier. From a personal marketing perspective, learning video is also an incredibly powerful tool. Making your own promotional videos and any kind of social content you need is going to save you a lot of money. Having the ability to be self-sufficient in business also takes a lot of the stress away. While you can always hire people to help out, you want to be able to do the key things yourself if needed. My business would not have gotten to the point it has without doing video. So if it's something you're interested in, I would 100% recommend you continue learning. Chapter 19, AI editing. The most significant industry shift I've seen in the past few years is AI regarding image editing. A lot of people look at AI with fear the same way many film photographers looked at digital in the early 2000s. I recommend that you're open to it. It will make your business more efficient. I use Imagen. It is spelled Imagen, Imagen. You can get some free edits if you use my link, imagen-ai.com/ref equals Taylor Jackson. You get 1,500 free edits to get started. Imagen will take a full gallery of unedited images and it will edit them exactly how I would. It looks at how I edited photos in the past and applies a similar edit to new images. Imagen will drastically shorten your learning curve if you're not a great editor yet. You can edit with one of their pre-built profiles like a pro in just a few minutes. In my use, Imagen will edit your entire wedding in less than 10 minutes, and it's getting quicker every single month. The first few weddings will likely be 95% accurate to what you would have done. After that, you can make any changes that you want, then submit those changes as fine-tuned adjustments back to Imagen. This way, the system learns what you didn't like. Then the next time your edits will be even better. After a few weddings, it will be making all the same editing decisions that you would. Depending on when you're reading this, Imagen will also do culling. This means that you run all the images that you take through the system and it helps you sort out what you should deliver. Imagen will save you hundreds of hours over a wedding season when it comes to editing and culling. So don't forget Imagen, imagen-ai.com/ref equals Taylor Jackson. This will give you some free edits to get started to see if this AI system is for you, but it is what I am using. Chapter 20, hiring people. You got into this business to take pictures of people's wedding days, but you'll have to hire as your business starts to scale. That might be as simple as subcontracting a second photographer or advanced as hiring a studio manager. Let's talk about all of my experiences over the years. Hiring second photographers has always been part of the job, and this is pretty simple. I tend to hire my friends first, and then if they're all booked, I'll cast a wider net. I've also trained friends to be second photographers when they'd never held a camera before. Lindsay, who is now my wife, came to a few weddings to hang out. She was working full-time 9 to 5, and I was working weekends, so if we wanted to hang out on a Saturday, she had to come to my work. At the first wedding, I handed her a camera with a 50mm f1.8 prime. After 10 hours with that camera in hand, she was pretty good. By wedding number 3, she was to a point that I would hire her as a second photographer. By wedding 5, she was fine to go to the guys getting ready coverage on her own. The startup curve isn't extreme for weddings. I would much rather hire a less good photographer, knowing that they socially fit into the day and will represent my company well, rather than a better photographer that is a bit of a dice roll on personality. Less good photographers will get better. Over the years, I've trained 7 of my friends to go from their first wedding with zero knowledge to become a great second photographer. It's fun to work with your friends as well. For payment, that's up to you and let your local market decide as well. We usually do somewhere from $40 to $50 an hour for second photographers. The next person to consider hiring is someone to help out with editing. This used to be very important, but is becoming less important now with the AI assistants. I've hired many different editors. For my first one, I would physically mail them a hard drive. My second one was my roommate. 3rd, 4th, 5th were all companies that I would upload a catalog to online. Now I use an editor to edit my wedding videos, and I handle most of my image editing. If you're busy and can spend some money buying your time back, I recommend that you do it. Hiring someone to manage the tasks that you don't want to frees you up for the things that will generate more money for your business. Regarding editing, while you are completing the product you sold, you're not generating any more revenue while you're spending those hours in Lightroom. Those hours actively spent marketing your business are going to make you more money. From the family and friends side, it can also free you up to spend more time with them. A wedding photography business is a business that you can almost put unlimited time into. Unfortunately, that can become a problem for your life's happiness. Figure out what you can outsource and start it early in your business. Bookkeeping and taxes are other places I hire people. Those are not tasks that I enjoy doing, and I am happy to pay someone else for them to do it. But again, I'm investing those hours back into things that will make me more money or make me happier. Outside of weddings, if you end up with a very active commercial side to your business, it might make sense to hire someone to handle those tasks, from email to taking meetings with clients to invoicing and ensuring that everything is in order. Having someone there to help will make your life a lot happier. Lastly, interns are also an option. There are probably some options if you have a local high school, college, or university. My wife, Lindsay, has had high school and university interns work for her and her businesses. And after that term was complete, they both turned into paying jobs. Chapter 21, My Average Wedding Day. I'm now going to walk you through my average wedding day. This includes the gear that I normally use for the section of that day and how things are structured. To give some background, I only work at about 6 venues now, unless something really interesting comes along. I've curated these venues and become a preferred vendor at them all. That took time. We'll talk about becoming a preferred vendor later in this audiobook. The venues I work at all have a getting ready space on site, usually a hotel, as well as a ceremony site that most couples use, as well as a reception space. For the most part, all of my weddings happen all in one location. This is from design. When I was writing my original How to Get Married guide for the local area, I included all of these venues and talked about how I love when weddings happen all in one location. Logistically, wedding days at one location are also pretty stress-free, or as stress-free as a wedding day can be. I like that. My couples like that. It's an idea that we match on and why those couples hire me. These venues are also all within a half-hour radius of my home. I arrive at that venue at least 30 minutes to 1 hour early. I want to give enough time in case there's surprise traffic or other issues. I usually arrive even earlier if I'm doing a wedding that requires a long drive. For example, if I have to drive 2 hours, that means that I will arrive an additional 2 hours in that area early. I just hang out because I don't want to rush my couples. I grab a coffee, maybe do some detail shots of the venue, fly a drone if I have to do video. I also ask the couple to send me a room number when they check in, if they're getting ready in their room, or they let me know the location if they already know it. Sometimes I'll text them the morning of. They might not get back to me, and I'll just go to the hotel reception and ask. 10 to 15 minutes before my start time, I will head to the bridal suite. This is usually around the time that they'll start wondering where their photographer is. In the case of a bride and groom wedding, I usually will start with the bride. If the groom is getting ready offsite, I might stop there first if it's a family home. If there isn't a hotel room at a different location, I'll usually say that we can do the getting ready shots at the venue, so here rather than at their hotel. And the only exception is if I have a second photographer, I'll typically just send them to the groom wherever they are. I typically open the gallery with an establishing shot, not a lot, just 1 or 2 of the venue, and then I head to the bridal suite. I arrive and tell them I'm early and they don't need to stress or rush to do anything. Arrival for me is usually about 1 hour before they're scheduled to complete hair and makeup. When I enter the room, I never start taking candids of everyone. I leave the camera pointed down and ask for details, rings, dresses, shoes, that type of thing. I'll find a spot near a window and grab a table if I can and start doing some detail photos. This acts as a nice warm-up with the group. They have some time to warm up to the fact that there is a photographer there. They also know that I'm not going to be creeping on them before hair and makeup is pretty much entirely complete. This is a nice way to enter the day. After the details are complete, I'll usually ask the hair or makeup artist to let me know when they're finished, and I'll come grab a few final touches. Doing this puts them at ease. No makeup artist wants to be in 100 photos while working with a bride. If they're a friend, this changes, and I'll put them in more candids along the way. At this point in the day, I'm usually on a 35 or 50 millimeter lens. The benefit of most 35 millimeter lenses is that they also give you a very nice close focusing distance. Depending on the lens, you might be able to get close enough to the rings that it's almost a macro shot. I personally will just bump into APS-C mode, and I usually get close enough to get the photo that I want of the rings. If you want, you could do this crop in post, but I'd rather just save myself from doing the work later. Once details are done, I'll typically switch to a 50 millimeter or an 85 millimeter prime, depending on the room size. Big room, 85, small room, 50. It allows me to get close to the subject without being in their space. I will also shoot these lenses wide open at f1.4 or f1.8 to make the background disappear into nice out of focus bokeh. Well, in a perfect world, we would have a very tidy getting ready room, but unfortunately in reality, that never happens. So it's nice to let the background just disappear. If you're on Sony, a lens like the Tamron 35 to 150 f2 to f2.8 is also a great choice for this part of the day. My only issue is that it's a little bit big and intimidating when you enter a new room. Once hair and makeup are done, it's time to get dressed. I usually step out in the hall and tell them to let me in once the bride is ready to be zipped or buttoned. Usually it's one of the bride's people and a family member to do this. A 35mm lens works well for full-length shots, but I find that most of my favorites from this part of the day come from a 50mm lens. If the dress is buttons, the getting ready process actually takes a few minutes. I will remind whoever does the buttons to smile and be happy rather than intensely focused since we're in no rush. If it's a zip, I'll have them pause there and look at each other, smile, look around, basically do anything I can to get a few frames from the 3-second zip up experience. After getting ready, I will take a few photos of whoever was present for it. Just a simple smile and face the camera, then look at each other and smile, nothing too complex. At this point, I will usually head over and meet up with the other side for the wedding. Sometimes I meet at the ceremony location, sometimes it's a room. I also have a full shot list available to members at taylorjacksoncourses.com if you're interested in seeing shot by shot what I typically do. The groom side is usually pretty relaxed. For same-sex weddings, many of my couples choose to get ready together, and this honestly makes things a lot easier. Also, I love the candidates from that part of the day. Before the ceremony, I'll usually do some quick group shots with whatever family is present, and I know that I'll be doing more later. Now, into the optional part of the day, the first look. First looks happen about 50% of the time at weddings for me. In the first meeting, I let them know the main reason why they would like to do a first look is either to relax nerves or if they would like to get all the photos done before the ceremony. After that, I don't push couples in either direction. For first looks, I will use a longer lens, either a 35 to 150 or a 70 to 200. I want to do my best to stay out of the way. I also make my camera as quiet as possible. This means shooting on silent shutter mode sometimes. Typically for a bride and groom wedding, I'll have the groom standing somewhere facing the opposite direction from the bride. I'll find some shade if it's a harsh sun time of the day, which it usually is. I'll also ensure that when they turn around that they're not going to turn right into a patch of sun. Then I'll have the second partner walk up and do one of two things. They can either stop a few feet away and have the other partner turn around, or they can go up and tap them on the shoulder. If you have another idea, that's fine as well. My advice is to not overcomplicate this part of the day since everyone's a little bit nervous. I will typically shoot the approach in front of the groom when the bride is approaching over their shoulder, then walk over to get the groom's reaction first. After that, I will go back to where I began. That way I can piece together a pretty good story from the moment of the day. At some point after the first look, they'll look over at you and ask, "What now?" I ask for a few standard smile face the camera photos, ask them if they'd like to look at each other for one, and then we head to a new location. At this point, I either stay with the lens I was on for the first look or I switch to a 50mm. At some weddings, the first look is just for the couple, and now we just move on to the ceremony. For other weddings, we'll usually do the bridal party photos at this point. It's rare to do all the family photos at this time since usually some of them arrive just for the ceremony. I don't mind leaving family photos until after the ceremony. This way you keep some of the traditional wedding elements, which I think older generations appreciate. After the first look, we will do what we can for wedding party photos. First looks are usually challenging for time of day and lighting, so we'll find some shade and go from there. I will do a 15 to 20 minute session with the bridal party. This includes all the shots from my list over on the members website. I'll also do any combinations of bridal party members that make sense, college friends, siblings, etc. I'll send the bridal party off and finish with another 15 minutes with the couple. I like to do photos with the couple in several different smaller sessions throughout the day, rather than a 30 or 45 minute one-time session. That's nice to have at least. Unfortunately, sometimes in real life, you'll have to do the bridal party, couples photos, and family all in a 15 or 20 minute window because the ceremony runs long and it's almost sunset. The ideal though, 2 or 3 sessions over the day with the couple, first look, then after the ceremony on location, and then a short sunset session to catch the best light. I'm pretty light when it comes to bridal party photos. When I was first getting started, all of my couples wanted 20 or 30 combinations of the bridal party. I am happy to say that just 2 or 3 are usually fine now. When I feel happy, I ask my couples if there's anything else they would like with the bridal party. If they say no, bridal party heads off to cocktails. They're always happy with how fast you got everything done, and I'm certain that it leads to more referrals. 30 to 45 minutes before the ceremony, I like to have the couple back into the bridal suite or the getting ready room. Guests will start to arrive, and I'll head out and start doing some ceremony details before everyone's there. If the reception is set up at this time, I usually go and do a round of photos at all the tables. No matter how finished the room looks, something will always be added in between the ceremony and reception, so you're going to likely have to reshoot a bit of it. I focus on the details and a few wide shots. I usually leave the head table for later because I know that there's a good chance that there's going to be some ceremony flowers added to that table before it's completed. When guests start to arrive, I go back to a longer lens, the 35 to 150 or a 70 to 200. Most of the day, I'm starting to shoot from the LCD rather than the EVF. For candids, I will use the fully articulating LCD a lot. I'm often standing a 90-degree angle from the people I'm photographing. I look for people that are in the best light, having the best time, and focus on them. I do pre-ceremony candids, kind of how I do cocktail hour candids. Make a loop of the room, then head off somewhere for another 5 minutes, come back, see what's changed, make another loop, then head off. I do my best not to attract too much attention and not to make anyone feel too uncomfortable. If I notice someone's visually a little uncomfortable anytime the camera goes near them or they're making repeated eye contact with my camera anytime it moves, I usually avoid them at this time. One of my goals for the wedding day is to get all of the guests in at least one photo. If the light is good at the ceremony, I do what I can to collect most of those while I have the chance. If I know cocktails or the reception light's going to be bad, I try even harder to capture those candidates now. When I see the officiant arrive, I will go say hello, ask if there are any restrictions, ask if they want a new headshot for Instagram as a joke. Then they'll usually say yes and just walk over to the window, take a few frames. Long lenses, 50, 85, all work for this. My ceremonies are usually pretty easy. Other styles of ceremonies are significantly more in-depth. Some go over many days. I'm going to speak to what I typically see the most often. If there's a videographer there, talk with them first for their plan for the ceremony, be nice, and try to work together as best you can. I focus pretty heavily on the front row guests. I stay off to the side, but I have an eye on them. If anyone looks like they're entering a conversation that's going to be a laugh or some good emotion, I usually point my camera in their direction and wait. While it's important to capture all the guests at some point in the day, the front row is usually immediate family and they deserve a little bit more of your attention. At some point, the music will likely change. The officiant signals things are about to begin. At this point, I'm in full documentary mode and on a 35 to 150 or a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. My ceremonies are rarely in a church, maybe 1 or 2 church weddings per year at this point, and the ceremony is usually 15 to 20 minutes total from start to finish. It will begin with the officiant walking down the aisle to say hello. If the couple wants an unplugged ceremony, which means everyone puts their cell phones and cameras away, this will be announced now. I do my best to stay out of the space and the view of the important family members. I don't have to stand in between a mom and her son to get the shot that I need. I can be a little bit to the side. The music will change, then usually the groom will come down the aisle first, maybe with a parent or two, maybe without. Then the groom's people will come down the aisle. Suits, I typically do a horizontal mid-length close-up. Dresses, I'll usually do full length. I do my best to isolate any distracting elements in the background or hide them behind people. Fire alarms, extinguishers, that type of thing will save you lots of time in Photoshop after. I also tend to shoot tighter at this point in the day. I found that if I go wider, I include people looking around and they kind of take you out of the scene, or people on their phones trying to take pictures. I'll always get one wider shot, but focus most on close-ups and full-length verticals filling most of the frame. Once both sides of the bridal party have come down the aisle, there will usually be a pause and a change of music. At this point, I get a groom reaction shot. I stay on the groom until the bride has entered the aisle. I do a variety of photos here, wide horizontal, close-up horizontal, full-length vertical. I back up a bit as the bride gets down to the end of the aisle. If she's walking down with a family member or friend, usually there's some sort of handoff. If working on a 70-200, you'll need some space, or you can switch to a second camera with a 35. If you have the 35 to 150 Tamron on, you can just stay on one camera. At this point, everyone is still standing, and I go down a side aisle to the back of the room. I get a wide shot with the couple up at the front, and everyone's still standing. Then when the guests sit down, I walk about halfway up the aisle, get a few different frames, then return to the back and go down one of the side aisles to get some more straight-on reaction shots of each partner. I'll also get a few reaction shots from the front row, and then I'll head back to the other side, and I'll do the same thing again. I do my best not to be loud. I have quiet shoes with rubber soles, so even if it is a hardwood environment, I'm pretty quiet. Vows, I will get the reaction shots, so whoever is not reading, I'll be taking their photos. I'll get close-ups of anyone that does a reading, and then I'll move a little bit closer for the rings, 3, 4, 5 rows back usually. I tend to want to get the ring exchange photos close up, but it never really works out how I want it to. For that reason, I also try to get a full-length vertical of the exchange as well. Even though the ring shot is small in that frame, I feel like it's a better photo than a close-up of kind of awkward hands. After rings, 3 things could happen. They could kiss, there could be a reading, or if you're in Canada or many other countries around the world, they go to a table to sign the marriage license. If you want to know the full rundown of the ceremony, I find it's easiest to ask when you're talking to the officiant. The main thing I want to find is any unusual things or when the first kiss comes. Again, there are lots of other styles of weddings that go way more in depth in terms of ceremony elements. And if you're uncertain, ask someone to tell you the key moments. Sometimes the kiss is a surprise and it's not announced. Sometimes small elements you wouldn't expect are key elements of the ceremonies. Someone will always be happy to walk you through if it's your first ceremony of that style. After the first kiss, they usually walk back down the aisle together after a short announcement. You can go for the safe shot and stay at the far back with a 70-200, or you can get close up and walk backwards with them in a wider lens like a 35mm lens. Both options look great. There's no right or wrong way. If you are working with a videographer and they're going to be 4 feet in front of the couple as they walk backwards down the aisle, they've kind of made the choice for you. You'll have to go wide. You can ask them to kiss when they get to the back of the aisle. That always makes a nice photo. I then pick up my bag and follow them. The celebration after the ceremony is great for candidates. I always recommend being there for that moment. There's usually a lot of energy, so get on a wider lens and you can get a little bit closer. Once the after ceremony celebration starts to wear down, I do my best to get the couple to head over to the family photo spot so they don't get swarmed by guests yet. I have a planner or a wedding party member tell family members to follow us for photos. This photo session is something the family would usually been told about prior to now. It could also be in the announcement just before the end of the ceremony. I always have a list of family photos they'd like and a friend of theirs to help me call out names. This is something that I'll talk to them about in the first meeting. Family photos usually go pretty quickly. If we didn't do a first look, I will do family photos first, then wedding party photos, then couples photos, 15 minutes with each group, and send them to cocktails. I have a lot of full wedding days over on the YouTube channel if you're interested in seeing more. I also always mention to the family if they want photos with other groups to flag me down during cocktails or the reception for it. I'll typically also follow the couple into cocktail hour to grab a few candidates. At this point, they're usually lighting candles in the reception space while we'll go in and do a proper round of photos there. If there are still people in the space, I will usually start with a 50mm or an 85mm lens to get the close-up details first. Then when people start to leave the room, I'll go wider and get a full room shot with no one in it. Detail photos like this are important for the couples, but they're also important for your business. If you want to get published in magazines and on blogs, these are the photos that they're going to be after. I know they're not the most exciting, but it's what they want. Once done with the reception details, I go back to cocktail hour for another few rounds of candidates. Same deal as the ceremony candidates, loop the scene, then go away for 5 minutes, then repeat. Guests will be allowed to enter the reception space, and I put my 50 or 85mm on for entrances. I ask the wedding MC where the couple is going to be coming in from if there are multiple doors. Sometimes the entire wedding party will come through one door, then the couple will come from somewhere else. This is when I decide if I need any flash power or not. Recently, with mirrorless and the amazing high ISO capabilities, I've been using flash less often. As long as the quality of light is good, I don't mind going without a flash. If there are bad pot lights or the lighting is a bit of a mess, I will add flash. I will start with on-camera flash. If that works, great. If it doesn't, I'll go off-camera flash. And I have on the members website, taylorjacksoncourses.com, I have a full off-camera flash guide for wedding photographers. I usually find one safe spot to get all the wedding party entrances from. It's nice because there's a bit of a warm-up for the couple. That way you can find the best angles and the best light you can. The couple comes in and I usually stand in the same spot to get that safe shot. Then I usually get ahead of them and get a few photos as they get closer to the table. My couple will often go right into their first dance at this point. If they do, I'll get some photos with the lens I have on as well as my second camera body, which is usually going to be a 35 or 24mm lens. Then they sit down and at some point, there's usually the opening remarks from an MC as well as maybe a grace. 85mm lens is my go-to at this point. I do my best to stay out of the way of guests, so I'm never blocking the podium. If I have to get in front of them, I time it so it's a quick disturbance. Usually the first few seconds when someone's on the microphone, they make the most audience eye contact as well as laughter and smiles. However, once they get to reading their speech, the eye contact is usually straight down on the page. Dinner is usually the slowest part of the wedding for me. Make sure you talk with your couples before the day so that you have a plate for dinner and a place to sit. Again, it's something that most couples won't consider if their venue doesn't bring it up. I personally don't love sitting with guests as an introverted person. Wedding days are challenging. It's nice to have some time to recharge a bit. Wording this to couples is always a bit weird. I usually just say that we prefer a table just to ourselves and a second photographer somewhere out of the way. It doesn't have to be in the same room, but I'd like to be able to hear if somebody gets on a microphone to start a speech. While the wedding planner says they'll warn you about speeches, they often have a lot going on and will forget. We will eat our dinner on our phones, bread first, all of the bread. Typically, speeches are in between courses, but sometimes they all stack at the end. So if it comes up in the first meeting, I will suggest in between courses. I also recommend suggesting a reasonable time limit for couples if they think that certain family members might go a bit long. Of course, those family members will always exceed that time limit, but at least they won't go for a full hour and a half. I will usually set up an off-camera light for first dances after dinner. On-camera light can work too, but off-camera seems to go with the dance vibe a little bit more. Sometimes I will gel my flash to match the environment. Sometimes I won't. Gel is a term for a colored modifier that you're putting on your flash. For example, a CTO gel or a color temperature orange will match tungsten style lights. A green one will help your flash match fluorescent bulbs. It's not the exact science. It's more about kind of getting it close enough. If I choose not to gel my flash, I use the difference in colors to separate my subjects from the rest of the room. You can experiment with this and see what you like best. I typically bounce the light off of something white or gray, a ceiling or a wall near the couple. I will shoot full manual flash and typically be on an 85mm lens. I will begin taking pictures close to the light source and then circle around the dance floor with my light staying in the same spot. Sometimes you get angles that work really well that you couldn't have planned beforehand. Halfway through the first dance, I'll move my light or put it on my camera for some different images. If it's still bright in the room and the quality of light is good, it's also possible that I will just stay ambient and not use flash. There are many different ways to photograph this part of the day, and all of them have their strengths. When the party starts, I will typically go to a wider lens, 35mm lens if it's a relatively tame party with a few people on the dance floor, 20mm lens if things are getting a little bit crazy, 24 also works. On camera, bounce flash is usually the easiest way to document this part of the day if you have a white ceiling. If you have a bounce card in your flash or an attachment, it's also nice to use. There are a few other events around this time. One is typically the cake cut. Most of my couples are no longer announcing their cake cut. It's just a thing that they go and do with me. Often it's the last thing that I will do at a wedding, and I'll head out after this. For the cake cut, I stay on my 20mm lens. The couple is going to ask you how they cut a cake. You can start by asking them if they're saving a tier. Sometimes they forgot that the top tier is coming home with them to be frozen and that it shouldn't be cut. I then verify that all the tiers are real. Sometimes there's a styrofoam tier in there to make the cake a little bit bigger. Usually they choose to cut the bottom or the second tier. And if they're a couple that would enjoy this, you can tell them to cut out a small piece and feed it to each other. Some couples just prefer to make the one slice and call it done. After this, they go back to the dance floor. If I'm still there, there's usually a bouquet toss at some point. I photograph this also with the 20mm f1.8. I'll typically be in front of the bride to get a few photos while they warm up and pretend to throw. Then when they throw, I'll get a little bit closer to the group that's catching it. There are usually some nice moments in there. Garter toss, I'm seeing less and less, and I'm fine if that one goes away forever. If it does happen, it's a 20mm lens job as well. A few more things can happen at this point. There might be a sparkler send-off or a last dance. For sparkler things, I usually use a 50 or an 85mm lens. Everyone has to spread out a little bit so they don't light each other on fire. And I use the telephoto compression from that lens to make everyone look a little bit closer together. For sparklers, usually the couple has a pretty good idea of what they want. There's probably some sort of sample photo they'll want to show you. The easiest way to do this is to get everyone in a group and the couple in the middle, have them kiss or do a 20-second first dance. The other option is a sparkler tunnel. You get everyone to line up in two straight lines facing each other, point the sparklers at each other like a roof, and then the couple runs through the tunnel. Again, 85 seems to work the best in this situation for me. They'll usually run at me for a few photos, then run back and do it all over again. You can also get into light painting, tripoding your camera and having your couple write their initials or draw a heart. Watch a video on that one and try to figure it all out before the wedding day if it is going to be a request. It's not that challenging to figure out, but it's better to generally know how to do it than to go on the wedding day and actually watch a YouTube video on site. The only other thing I would do now in the evening is a quick night session. Usually I will use some of the dancing as a downtime to go around the venue and find some interesting compositions. Sometimes I will pre-light it using my second photographer. That way the couple just has to walk into the photo and there's no guesswork. LED light panels are great for this part of the day because you can see exactly what you're doing. If you're in a location that has some stars, you can include your couple in a nice nighttime star scene. These are usually some of my favorites. I set everything up exactly as I want it to be, then I go get the couple. I then place them in the scene and take the photo. For star scenes, it's usually a long exposure, so I just have them stand still in a comfortable position for about 10 seconds. Of course, you could also light them and blend exposures and post if you want to, but I find it easier just to get everything right in camera if you can. Night photos are also a great excuse to get creative. They're a lot of fun and something unique for your portfolio. After this, I will typically download my second photographer's cards before leaving, or if they're a friend that I see often, maybe I'll take one of the cards. Then I have them keep one card as backup just so they're in two different places. I'm on my way home by 11 p.m., usually closer to 10 p.m. And next, we're going to talk about the backup process once I arrive at home. Chapter 22, my backup process. In wedding photography, your backup process has to border on extreme. You already know to bring backup cameras and lenses to wedding days. This chapter is going to focus on what I do for image backup. First, I think it's important to shoot a main camera with 2 card slots, make them full backup duplicate slots. Well, I know we spent years with just 1 card slot and very few of us had issues. There's no reason to take the unnecessary risk now that most cameras have 2 card slots. I never take my cards out on a wedding day. I will shoot 128 gigabyte or 256 gigabyte cards in both of my slots. In the rare case that I shoot way too much and my card is filling up my main camera, I will actually switch to my second camera body as main. The one exception to this rule is if I'm leaving a venue in a sketchy area or there's a bit of a walk to a car. In that case, at the end of the night, I might take a second card out of my camera and put it in a different location. Maybe this is decent practice, even if you do feel safe. Everyone's been watching you all day with a bunch of expensive camera gear, and now you're heading to the parking lot 9 p.m. with it. I never leave my cameras unattended on wedding days, especially my main camera where the key family photos are. I keep that in my hands all day. It's also important never to delete images off of cards in cameras. This creates gaps in the card's memory, and it's the only time I've ever had issues with memory cards. Once I arrive home, the backup process begins. I shoot RAW plus JPEG in my cameras so I'm able to quickly make a backup online after the wedding. Within 1 hour, I will have all of the JPEGs backed up somewhere online. You can use a service like Dropbox or Backblaze for this. I like to shoot JPEGs so I can easily back up my entire career of weddings on this service without it being too much data. You can also downsize your RAW files with a service like RAWZ or Adobe DNG Converter for web storage. When I get home, step 1 is to load everything from the day onto 2 separate hard drives. I don't use any fancy RAID systems or anything, just 2 hard drives. One hard drive is my working drive and the other is a backup drive. I will make a folder for the wedding day, then each photographer in there. I put my card into the card reader and drag the folders from my card to each drive individually. I don't let Lightroom or any other program handle the ingest process for me. I like to just see it being done. I also will never drag the folder from one drive to another. It's always from the card to each of the drives individually. Cards are fast these days, so I sit at my computer while this copy's over. I've had a few random issues on Mac where it will randomly restart Finder and close the transfer without issuing any sort of error message. I repeat the download for each card. Once everything is done copying over, I will upload all of the JPEGs to Dropbox. If you want to back up your RAW files online, something like Backblaze might be the way to go. When a drive gets to about 85% full, it gets retired and I buy a new one. If you have a desktop setup, Seagate expansion drives are what I use and they've been great. You can also get a lot of additional speed by using solid state drives as working drives. My wife Lindsay has an additional step of backup. She won't format the cards from a wedding until it's been delivered. This means that she owns a lot of cards. They're all individually numbered and she has a spreadsheet that records what numbers are which weddings. Once the final images are delivered to clients, the cards go back into use. I will also call the images the night of the wedding or the next morning. This is another visual that everything is there and that no parts of the day are missing. Currently, I'm using Imagine to help me with the culling and image editing. It's very good. Making your image selects the night of the wedding or the day after speeds up the workflow as well. You know what's there and you're faster to get it finished. Once the final images are delivered to client, I will leave the gallery online for as long as possible. I promised them 5 years, but I have no plans to ever take it down. One recommendation for portfolio shots is to keep a backup folder of all of the RAW files on Dropbox. If your editing style changes over time, it's nice to have access to those RAW files again. You don't have to follow exactly what I do, but please ensure you're backing up your files correctly. You will get emails from couples 10 years from now saying that they've lost their wedding images and wondering if you still have the backups. It's nice to be able to send them the gallery within a few minutes of that email. Chapter 23, Marketing. Now let's get into marketing. I've done many different things for my business over the years. I will outline the strategies that have worked the best over the next couple chapters. My path to booking a lot of weddings was the path of becoming an expert in weddings in the local area. I made an effort to completely immerse myself in the local wedding culture. This is hard at first, especially if you don't have any friends in the industry. I would go to every in-person event that I could. Eventually, I started arranging photographers' get-togethers in our local areas. Through these get-togethers, I connected with most of the other local vendors and venues. Then I remembered what worked in music photography. People like you more if you make them look cool, so I started doing vendor spotlights and shoots with them. These shoots were fun, and I got to hang out with friends and get better at photography. Quickly, I realized I was number one on their referral list. If a couple didn't have a wedding photographer, they would recommend me. This also extended outside of real weddings. If they needed some product shot or wanted to produce a styled shoot, I was the one that they would message. Just like concert photography, it was nice to feel needed and included. These relationships also made wedding days a lot of fun. I was going into the day, but I now knew most of the staff. The additional plus is that I know who to send images to, and they promoted the images and my photography through their channels. Many of these vendors were advertisers in magazines, meaning their work was more likely to be featured in print and on blogs. I started getting a number of as seen on badges on my website and looking a lot more credible. The other thing I learned from music is that travel jobs generate credibility. I was traveling a bit for my part-time job, and I started doing some photos along the way. I would do my best to set up shoots with couples in the area that I was traveling to. On some trips, I'd check a bag with a wedding dress for a model shoot. I really did everything I could to build an interesting portfolio. Other local photographers did have some destinations in their portfolio, but nothing like this. In all honesty, I was a new photographer and my photos were pretty average, not better than my work at home. The only difference was that these photos were taken in different places and couples really seemed to be impressed by this. I started to book more weddings and those couples were more regularly my ideal couples. They also seemed to like to travel. It wasn't uncommon to meet up in New York City for their engagement session rather than doing it at home in Toronto. Within a few years, wedding photography had created a pretty fun life. Overall, the most successful marketing I did in the early days was to be busy and keep working in cool locations. This is something that stays true to this day. I'm always interested in doing work in other places in the world. It continues to reflect positively on my business. Next, we're going to talk about the first big thing I did for marketing, my first promo video. Chapter 24, Promo Videos. I was incredibly nervous about making my first promo video. I had been in front of a camera on a skateboard, but never had to talk to that camera, especially when speaking in business language. My friend Mark borrowed a video camera from his job at BlackBerry, and we went out to record. I had printed a 2-minute script in big text on a few pieces of paper that I spent most of the morning memorizing. We set up a camera on a tripod, and it was time to say some words. I went to say the first line and quickly realized that I'd forgotten everything that I'd memorized. After a few awkward attempts, we realized it would be better if I just went line for line. I would pick the paper up, memorize a sentence, put the paper down, and say the line to the camera. It would take me 4 or 5 times to get the line to sound natural. It took a while to get through that simple 2-minute script, but we got there. I knew we would be capturing some B-roll to cover the edits. The next day I set up a shoot with 2 of my friends that were a couple. The idea was to just do an engagement shoot and Mark would grab some behind the scenes for the promo video. There's a lot of pressure when you're filming a behind the scenes video. I knew that this shoot had to stand up for years to come. Fortunately, the light came together perfectly and the shoot went great. After this session, my first promo video was 2/3 done. The next and final piece was a behind the scenes wedding shoot. I drove to Toronto to meet with another wedding photographer and her husband. They had been married a few years now and agreed to let me take some photos of them in wedding clothes. As we got close to the location, it started to rain. Not really ideal. We did what we could, but the entire shoot ended up being about 20 minutes because it came to a total downpour. We got enough clips to cover the edits in the video, but it was by no means one of my best shoots. We figured we would do what we could with the footage and just layer in other portfolio images if needed. The final video came together pretty well. It looked really professional. We were both very happy and surprised by it. That video was used on my website for almost 7 years, and it was viewed almost 500,000 times. It was another key to me getting expert status and credibility with my couples quickly. If you're a member at taylorjacksoncourses.com, you also have access to some promo video scripts. They're in this year's edition of Book More Weddings. I know you've already thought about making a promo video, and I just want to give you another push to do it. You probably already have the camera to do it. It's also nice to have a lav mic. I use a Tascam DR-10L or the DJI wireless kit or the Rode Wireless Go 2. There's a lot of options out there. I use Adobe Premiere Pro for editing, but if you want something for free, check out DaVinci Resolve. It's amazing. iMovie can also work if you want something really simple. For technical, I recommend shooting in 4K so you can easily make a shorter vertical version of your promo video for the social media platforms that prefer that aspect ratio. Not only is a promo video a great sales tool, but it's also the first step to getting more comfortable in front of a camera. Getting comfortable enough in front of the camera to do more content like venue reviews and wedding planning guides. You're going to become the most helpful and knowledgeable photographer in your area and end up booking more weddings than you could ever imagine. The first step to building a promo video doesn't even include writing a script. Instead, I would just begin making an effort at every single wedding or engagement shoot to capture a little bit of behind the scenes footage. Then keep this in a folder on your computer. It can be easy iPhone or GoPro clips, or you could bring someone to run behind the scenes for you on the shoots and weddings you're the most excited about. If you're not working a lot yet, you can do what I did and set up some shoots for behind the scenes footage. One of the benefits of this is the entire video can feel a little bit more cohesive and polished. After you have some footage, it's time to decide on the script. I would focus on what you enjoy about wedding photography, speaking in a way to connect to your ideal clients. If you say something like, the best wedding photography is candid, and your couple nods in agreement, you're that much closer to getting the job. Now, once you have this video, what do you do with it? First, it obviously goes on your website. Second, it's going to be an incredible video to run as a paid ad, which is our next chapter. Chapter 25, paid ads on social media. I was scared to run paid ads for the longest time. I thought it was me admitting that I was a failure, that I wasn't good enough to organically scale my business. After a few weeks of paid ads, I realized that I was wrong. Paid ads are a gas pedal if you have a solid foundation for a great business. Sure, you'll likely find organic traction over time and might eventually get to the same place of success. However, paid ads will get you there faster. If you're just running a paid ad to a static link or a single image, you're not using them as effectively as you could be. I'm going to talk through the scope of Instagram here since it's the most common place that your couples are likely going to be. Instagram has a preference for vertical video, so it's best to make vertical video or square video to promote. While it is a bit annoying to recut promotional videos to be vertical, it is worth the effort. It's mostly just going back through the project and dragging clips left and right so they nicely fit into the vertical view. It might also be a good thing if you can cut down the length to 1 minute. Also valuable is to end the video with a call to action. Click the link to learn more. This can be in text or audio if you didn't record it with your promotional video. You can also just do it in voiceover. There are a few different ways you can promote the video. You can upload it as a reel and boost the reel, or you can go to the Meta Ad Manager and make it a standalone ad. Either way you do it, you will have access to some powerful targeting tools. On an Instagram boost, you'll be able to target people interested in wedding photography, wedding planning, and other things. You can make a radius of a comfortable distance around where you live. You can also target other major cities around if you're interested. Through the Meta Ad Manager, you can target recently engaged couples and can also target based on how recently engaged. I do a full walkthrough of this on the member site in Book More Weddings 2022 if you're interested in watching the full video. I recommend doing $5 per day for paid ads all year long. The catch is that you have to switch up the ad content every couple of weeks. To get more advanced, you can split test different versions of paid ads to see which work best for you. You can also try your luck with different platforms. I've had good success with Instagram and Facebook, but Pinterest and TikTok are also options. Google ads are worth considering as well. In my local area, there are a lot of photographers always advertising on them, pushing the price up. So for me personally here, I don't find them good value. Google ads also don't do something that I find very important. There's no way to pre-qualify a lead before they click that link and cost you the real money. On Instagram, a video view might only be worth pennies, while the link click is still maybe 50 cents or $1. Someone has watched the video before they've clicked through the ad. That's a very qualified lead for that dollar. If someone sees text on Google, clicks through, that dollar spent is very unqualified. This all said, one successful wedding booking easily covers the ad spend. For Instagram and Facebook during January and February, I will put an extra $10 to $15 per day into my ad spend. Here, the end of January to the end of February seem to be the biggest time for bookings, so it's worth the little extra money. Many couples get engaged over the holidays, and early in the year gets crazy. For ideas of what else to try out for ads, your promotional video is great, but there are other ways to bring value to potential couples. If you were to do a video pointing couples to a guide of the 10 best venues in your local area, this will go over very well. Again, you're offering up your expertise, making their lives better. Doing this the first week of January would also be great timing, as everyone is looking for venues. Any sort of high value content that you can make is encouraged. You'll notice that content like this gets a lot more clicks. This means in your ad manager, the ad relevance score will be higher, and this means that Meta will actually charge you less money for the same ad. All ads have a lifetime before they begin to burn out and the relevance score starts coming down and the pay per click cost gets too high. At that point, it's time for a new ad. Fortunately, there are always new couples becoming engaged and planning a wedding, so there is no harm in recycling the ads that you make. I find it easiest to batch process a bunch of them at a time. Spend a day or two making 4 or 5 ads that you can cycle for the entire year. Another boost that adds value are carousel posts focused on venues. Pick a venue that you've shot at that is popular in your area, one that you'd like to become a preferred vendor at. Do write up about the venue, some tips for having a great wedding there, as well as some sample images. Boosting a piece of content like this does a few things. First, the venue is going to see a lot of interaction. That's going to reflect very well on you. Second, it's possible in the comments a proper discussion will start and add even more value to people planning their wedding. I'd be taking this concept and writing a blog post to permanently be on your website and rank for search as well. If you want to go next level with it, you can also do a video venue review and tour. Being the host of a video like this will show that you have a lot of expert status in the industry, leading to trust from your couples. The other benefit is that other competitor venues will see these videos. They'll want you to come make one at their venue, and they'll make it even easier for you to get on their preferred list. More on that in the next chapter. Paid ads have the ability to rapidly accelerate a well set up business, so don't feel like you're failing by paying. Very few businesses succeed on organic alone. Plus, those businesses that do succeed on organic would have been doing even better with paid. Paid ads are incredibly powerful around short-term offers as well, specifically for family photography. I would run the same special 3 to 4 days before Christmas every year. It would be gift certificates for family photo sessions. They could buy it online, print it at their house, and I would make 25 available yearly. They would sell out in a few hours. I promoted them with a simple video saying that if you don't know what to get for somebody for a gift this year, get them a photo session. I would put $300 in paid ads into this to sell out. To get even more urgency, you could promote it the day before the sale goes live and say that it starts at 10 a.m. the next day. Once they're gone, they're gone. This is the only time of the year that I would discount my normal family services. I would give the session an excuse to why it's being discounted. I would make it only 10 images and a 20-minute session. This made it different enough from my regular family sessions. With paid ads, you can reach everyone in your local area, even if you've never been in contact with them. Another great way to promote these sales are through mailing lists. It's often forgotten about, and we're going to be talking about them shortly in a future chapter. Chapter 26, Becoming a Preferred Vendor. Becoming a preferred vendor is a great way to book weddings. Some venues will have a long list with many photographers, and some venues will have a shorter list. So while the first step is to get on the list, the big step is to become number one on that list. That doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be listed first, but in sales meetings, you want to verbally be the photographer that the venue suggests. This is a long game, and there aren't really any shortcuts. To become a preferred vendor, you have to do a few things. First, you have to be somebody that represents the venue well. You're not going to cause any problems with the clients. Second, you follow the rules and they enjoy working with you. Third, you create great marketing material for them. To most, this means your images. I said there aren't any shortcuts, but there might be one. If you're helping the venue book work, you will be fast-tracked to preferred and top suggested. They can always get nice images of their venue, but very few photographers will refer a couple to the venue, and it's not as hard as you think either. In the last chapter, paid ads, I talked about creating value carousels and video tours. These are things that promote you, but also they promote the venue. Listing the couple in the top 3 places to get married guide will likely have someone contacting them because they saw it. And even if the couple doesn't mention you, the venue will still notice that you're promoting them. Sustained promotion over a longer period of time is even better. Every few days, a story or a mention of some sort. Venues are busy and they're not always thinking about adding people to the preferred list. Usually once or twice a year, they revisit that conversation. If you've been known for a while and have been actively helping them book couples, you're going to be very high in consideration. When you're in the venue, you can also just ask. Even asking what the process is or what they consider when adding a new preferred venue can start the conversation. If you haven't shot at a venue yet, bringing them a turnkey styled shoot is also a nice option. Offer to shoot it at 10 a.m. on a Monday or Tuesday when they don't have any other events. Make it as easy as you possibly can on the venue. If they seem interested in the styled shoot, bring them into the conversation about what the styled shoot should be. They might connect you with other preferred vendors at the venue, then slowly you become part of the vendor family. The more work you can do at the venue, the more likely it is that you are going to be preferred. The easiest way to book jobs is to actively promote the venue, have posts and videos to rank on Google, do some paid ads promoting yourself as well as the venue. If you are promoting a few venues above others, you'll notice that organically you end up booking weddings there a lot more often. Once you're around for a few weddings, it will become very easy for the venue to include you on their list. For what the list actually means, there seems to be no real standard. It could be you're on the venue's website. It could be that you're in a handout. They might print a full magazine. They might even ask you to pay money to be on the list. In my experience, no venues ask for kickbacks on specific bookings or a percentage of weddings that you book. I have heard of it happening, but it's rare. But there might be some sort of cost to actually getting on the list. There is also a chance that the list just might be closed or that it's family members only or something weird that you can't control. I've noticed this at a few venues. Once you're on the preferred list, this is another huge badge of credibility. You can advertise on your website that you're a preferred vendor at that venue. You can even offer something special for couples getting married there. Maybe it's a bonus hour or a free next day preview of images, something that doesn't cost you a whole lot. I do these specials for venues and anyone coming in through a planner that I work with often. In my experience, you can be preferred at many different venues, but pay special attention to make sure you're promoting them all somewhat evenly. Typically, there will be one venue that you work at the most and have the best relationship. In this case, I typically offer them some bonus extras. I've been known to do free promotional videos for my favorite venue, or maybe I print them an album. Another thing that has paid for itself 100 times over was giving the venue a sample album. When I had enough images to do a book on just that venue, I printed out one and gave it to them. One thing venues seem to like is when you can help them promote off-season weddings. Here, it's very difficult for them to sell winter weddings. If I can put together a few nice spreads in a book to showcase winter, they will really appreciate it. Outside of the book, building blog posts like the best places to get married in winter in your city will also show them that you get it and that you're on the same page. Once a year, I would also offer to shoot the new menu items for the season and new company headshots. Sure, I could have charged the normal rate for these, but the staff are the ones helping me book 15 to 20 weddings per year. The happier I can keep everyone, the longer that continues. Being a preferred vendor makes filling up each year just a little bit easier. While your business will never fully be on autopilot, this will be a pretty consistent way to generate bookings for you every single year. Chapter 27. Email lists. What is it? Is it 2001? These are still incredibly effective in my business, surprisingly. As wedding photographers, we're kind of in this weird space. We create a business that can generate a very high $1,000 plus sale just one time though. After the client or couple buys, they'll never buy that same product again. That's why it's important to build a mailing list. Well, it's true that your couple isn't going to buy another wedding from you. They can still remain a lifelong customer. Family sessions are the key here. I know I said this book is on wedding photography, but it's nice to have secondary income that supports our main business. Family sessions aren't something you're going to run all year, every single year. Rather, you offer them at slower times in your wedding calendar. The idea is to turn a one-time wedding customer into someone that you see every single year. Social media works well for this, but you're at the mercy of the algorithm. When you have a mailing list, you have instant access to them at any time. If you have a smaller client list, you can even send out personalized emails to everyone. For where to run your email list, MailChimp is free up to 2,000 emails, so that might be an easy place to start. Depending on where you live in the world, email laws might be a little bit different, so even if you have a small list, please ensure that you abide by the proper rules. Now, the key to getting people to sign up for your email list is offering something they will only get by being on it. I like one-time offers with an expiration date. For example, sign up to my email list before midnight and I'll send you a 25% off family session coupon, that type of thing. This is also a great thing to boost with paid ads as well. Your market is no longer just engaged couples in between 23 and 35 years old. It's now everyone. Well, not everyone, but you get the idea. A much larger market. For who books a family session, in my experience, it is one of two people. The first person, a past bride looking for family photos about 2 years after their wedding. Usually this includes a new member of their family. The second person is the mother of a bride or groom. Good news, if you want to target more mothers, a lot of them hang out on Facebook, so paid ads to target them are going to be very effective. Come up with a good hook to get them to opt in. And now, what do you do with the list? Since I only run 1 or 2 family session offers per year, I give a little bit of a lead up. A week before the sale goes live, I'll send out an email saying that Tuesday at 10 a.m., I will be releasing 20 slots for Christmas family sessions at a 30% discount. I resist calling them mini sessions personally, but if those things are known in your area, it makes sense to call them that. Also, if you have a focal website, you can set up a mini session package that will include available time slots, take payments, and schedule people. Learn more about that at bookfocal.com. Make sure that if you are discounting services, explain why they are being discounted. For example, maybe the session comes with 5 retouched images and it's a bit shorter. They're not required to buy additional photos, but if they would like to, it is X number of dollars or X number of dollars to unlock the full gallery. If you're into in-person sales and want to sell prints only, not digital, this type of offer can be converted to that as well. Ensure you're transparent about the pricing up front so you don't surprise anyone. I like to send out offers around the holidays, Christmas, and Mother's Day being the big ones. My wife, Lindsay, runs seasonal sessions that she will do each season, and many of her couples will come back at least 2 times per year. If you want to make more money, make more offers. For me, I typically just run the holiday season special because it's a low point in income in that year, so it's nice to have a little boost going into the winter. Other than for specials, I don't actually use my email list. While it might be good practice to remind people that you exist, I just forget that it exists. It's a problem. Email lists are a great way to generate income when you need to. You have instant access to everyone that signed up, and they're primarily past clients that already know and trust you. Sign up and get one started today, and keep adding to it while you build your business over the next few years. Chapter 28, Wedding Magazines. It was always my dream to get into a wedding magazine. Getting into print might be your dream as well. There's something special about being in a book and being on sale at stores. Well, I had a pretty rude awakening. Pretty much all the magazines accessible to younger photographers are all pay to play. That means if you take out a full page ad, there's a chance that your real wedding day will also be included. It's rare that any wedding in a wedding magazine is run if no one attached to the wedding is an advertiser. The good news is that there is a good chance that venues and other local vendors might be advertisers with different magazines. If you know who those vendors are connected to, you can usually get a wedding run pretty easily. Wedding magazines care primarily about the details, so make sure your wedding day detail game is strong. Of course, they'll want a photo of the couple, but the details are more important than the couple, unless the couple is famous. By details, I mean everything that goes into the day, from the getting ready robes to the custom glasses for mimosas that may have been made to hair pieces, dresses, suits, cufflinks, shoes, flowers, ceremony setup, all parts of the reception tables, food, specialty drinks, gifts for guests, everything. Most magazines will want about 100 photos to choose from, and if you can give them all the details, they will be very happy. Shooting for the details is also just good practice. You should be doing it anyways, and if getting in a wedding magazine or on their blog is additional motivation, it's a good thing. If you want to spend your money and become an advertiser in a magazine with a chance to get run in it, here are my experiences. I don't think I booked any weddings directly from the advertisement. For me, though, that was never the value. The value in being in these magazines was to align myself with other vendors that are also in these magazines. It's very easy to set up styled shoots if you're shooting something for submission to a magazine that other vendors are also attached to. If you involve the magazine itself in these shoots, there's also a good chance that you may get to photograph the cover. These are great boosts of status and credibility for your business. Having a digital copy of the spread and posting it on your blog is a great way to make that one-time investment to a limited audience seen by a larger audience. The As Seen On label on your website is a nice trust indicator for potential couples. Seeing other logos just helps people see us as more legitimate. Some services make it easier for you to submit to many different publications. Too Bright Lights is the main one that comes to mind. I've had success in getting on blogs submitting through Too Bright Lights, but all of my print success has come from what I discussed above. Now, if you want to go to the next level, as well as you have the time and interest, once you have some vendor relationships in town, one thing I would recommend would be creating your own small magazine. There are many templates online to make this pretty easy. The idea is not to make money, but to feature the venues and vendors that make your weddings happen. You can also showcase other friends that are photographers if you would like to. If you're able to design a magazine and do a limited run of them, you will have enough to put in all of the different shops that are featured in the book. How you finance this is up to you. For example, you could ask the vendors to each pitch a small amount of money to cover the printing cost, or you just cover it all yourself. The idea here is to make a magazine that these vendors will be giving out to anyone that comes into their store or meets with them for a wedding. There's also a good chance that no other photographer in your city has ever done anything like this. What this also means is for next year is that all the vendors are going to want to be in it. Maybe you set up some style shoots for it, build your portfolio, build your connections, and have huge expert status credibility indicators in a world that all other local vendors are aware of. You'll notice a shift happens where venues and vendors start referring you because they would like to be in your magazine. If you don't work together, it's not likely they're going to end up in it. A magazine is a big project, but the return can also be big. If it seems interesting to you, it might be worth researching. Chapter 29, Wedding Shows. Wedding shows are incredibly saturated with photographers. Some limit vendor categories, but most don't. If 100 photographers and one florist sign up for a wedding show, the show will still run. I've had mixed results with wedding shows in the past. It's nice that you get to be there in person, and if it's another spot that a couple sees you, it's a good thing. It's also a thing to post on social media and your blog that does give you more credibility. The downside is that I rarely see direct bookings because of normal wedding shows. If I can give you any advice, it would be to have a way to collect email addresses on site and follow up with people, meaning you could give away a wedding or an engagement session, something attractive enough to get people to give you their contact information. I have friends that go all out for wedding shows and they have spent over $10,000 on their booth. They do very well. I also have some friends that did very well at shows because they're low-cost wedding photographers. The middle is where it seems the most difficult to be at them. All of this said, most wedding shows are break even if you book one single wedding from them. So if you have the time, they might be worth it. Similar to magazines, one of the reasons to go to wedding shows is to connect with other vendors in real life. You'll make nice friendships if you're beside a venue or an officiant for the weekend. Where I've had better success is with preferred vendor wedding shows. Preferred vendor wedding shows are where a venue asks all of their preferred vendors to come out. It's usually a more low-key wedding show, and these are usually in the prime booking season and don't cost you anything. You're not expected to create a large booth or anything complex, just a few albums, a TV, a large monitor, and some giveaways are all you need. Same rules apply from a show like this. To make the most of it, figure out a way to collect email addresses. I also like to create some sort of branded takeaway as well. In the past, Lindsay and I have done branded chapsticks. It's winter and it's dry here in January, and it's a very easy thing that people are interested in taking, and then it sits in their purse for the next few months. Whether it is a public show or a preferred vendor show, I like to run a special of some sort for only the people that come to the show, $500 off weddings, something like that. I typically don't love discounting, but this seems to get more people contacting me after the show. People will also reference in the email of the handout, and then you have some visibility on where your bookings are coming from. For public wedding shows, if you're a mid-range photographer, they may or may not be worth doing. On the other hand, if you are a low-cost photographer, you may see a lot of bookings from them. There is also another tier of wedding shows, luxury, high-end, invite-only. Sometimes these are attached to a high-end wedding magazine and you have to be an advertiser to even attend. The value here is also vendor connections. You might see some bookings, but you'll always be successful if you go in to generate and maintain connections with the other vendors. It's a long-term strategy and it will make your business bookings for years to come rather than just on the day. Chapter 30, Social Media. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube. It's a full-time job if you want to run media on all of these platforms simultaneously. So in this chapter, I'm going to talk about the ones that I use and some ideas to maximize your reach. My suggestion is to pick the ones that you enjoy the most. If you find it easy to put your images up on Instagram, then keyword them again for Pinterest, there's no problem with stopping there. Social media can easily consume your entire life as a business owner. You let it. Let's talk about one of the biggest for my business right now, Instagram. Chapter 31, Instagram. Instagram is where a majority of my couples are active now. I find paid ads here to be the most effective. You can easily target people by those that are actively looking and engaging in wedding planning content. The good news is you no longer have to just target the couple. Your net can now include people helping others plan weddings as well. This can include the wedding party and even parents. There's more in Book More Weddings 2023 over at the members website, taylorjacksoncourses.com. With a few dollars, you can now be in front of a large audience of people interested in wedding planning, a very nice trade in my opinion. For actual Instagram content and what is performing best, please don't follow exactly what I am currently doing. I run an unusual business now with YouTube content, education, and also weddings. A lot of the advice you will get is to narrow down and only post wedding content if you want to be a wedding photographer. I don't entirely agree with this. Well, it will book weddings. Wedding images don't appeal to everyone. If you've already photographed a couple's wedding and they're still following you, they're probably overseeing wedding images. I think it's important to strike a balance between the content that appeals to your ideal couples and showcasing your photography. If most of your following is local, I don't see any problem with showcasing local content. Other businesses you support, the places you go, the events and activities we're doing in your city. You also have skills to showcase things in a way that most people don't see on social media. The landscape of what's working best is always shifting. While writing this, Reels and 10 image carousel posts are tied in the best things that you can do on the platform. Reels and carousels are also the best things you can put money into for paid ads. I'm a big believer in posting helpful and, if possible, entertaining content. Rather than just posting a few images from the wedding day with the couple's names and hashtagging it, think about what you learned on that wedding day that could be helpful to other couples booking weddings potentially at that venue. Write that in the caption. Make sure you're tagging the venue on the location. Couples scout venues by looking at what's been posted there recently. The goal is to be in the venue images and give valuable information they'll actually read. For example, wedding planning tips, meal suggestions, whatever you think could be helpful for couples looking at that venue. One of the key metrics for Instagram is making content that gets shared. The more the content that you create is being shared through DM or being shared on stories, the more Instagram is going to show that content. When creating or posting anything on the platform, think about what you can do to make it more shareable. If you want to get even more advanced, brainstorm the most shareable things that you can create before thinking about what to post. I have a notepad document on my phone with ongoing ideas. Typically, I'll schedule some time in a day to create a few reels all at once, not to be posted back to back, but spaced out. I find it easier if I have the ideas ready to go. Sometimes I'll script them, or sometimes I'll just write a bit of an outline. Vertical video is also here to stay. It was a bit of a mindset shift for me. Wedding day and behind the scenes, I'm thinking about ways to create the style of content that will be helpful and shareable. If it's the easiest in the beginning, save a few reels and use them as inspiration for what you want to do. If you see something that stopped you from scrolling, or maybe even got you to share that reel or post with a friend, think about what in that content worked. Similar to what we talked about earlier when it comes to intentionally building your style, you can also do this with Instagram. Figure out what you like, collect a bunch of reels, see the commonalities between them, and start building your style in those commonalities. Then you'll be creating something that is unique to you. Now, I know you might be saying that you got into this wedding photography thing to be a wedding photographer. Well, it's sad we can no longer market on great images alone anymore. It's better to go with the market rather than to fight against it. Doing social media content with intention is just part of doing business now. Other content that does well is anything that inspires interaction. Having a reason to comment, vote, or answer a question will always help that content do better. Instagram just wants to keep people on their app so they can sell ads. And once you can help with that, they will start organically rewarding your account. If you go against that, like linking people outside of the app, they will punish your content. If I post a piece of content with link to it, or have lots of people go to my profile to click a link and leave, the content will always do poorly. For links in my stories, the posts will typically do about 1/5 as good as a normal piece of content, even if that content does get reshared a lot. If you're looking for a full monthly Instagram content calendar that takes a lot of this into account, there is one in Book More Weddings 2023, TaylorJacksonCourses.com. When it comes to Instagram and all social media, it's important to understand that your goals might not be the same as someone else's. You don't need 100,000 followers to have a successful business. Having 500 people paying attention will do much more good for your business than 100,000 loose connections. Now, let's move on to Facebook. Chapter 32, Facebook. A lot of people will say Facebook's dead, that no one is on there anymore. I don't think that's the truth. There is still a very large user base on the platform. Just because people in a certain area of the world might not be using it as much as they once were, it doesn't mean that the platform is dead. Currently, Facebook Reels are getting a huge amount of organic traction, more than I've seen with Instagram. Being open and able to see new opportunities in business is important. The 30-plus-year-old crowd seems to be the dominant user on Facebook now, which means while there are still couples getting married, that age is trending up. As I mentioned in the past chapters, it's a great place to run paid ads to capture moms with those family sessions. In Book More Weddings 2020, I discussed a new strategy to target moms of couples on Facebook. I had great success with that strategy, writing copy, making videos to share my photography website with the couple getting married. This worked well and continues to this day. Same rules apply with Facebook as Instagram. Video content is generally preferred. Facebook subtitles seem to randomly come on and off. So when making video content, I will usually put the subtitles on the actual video. If you're using Premiere Pro, there's an automated way to do this in captions, or you can use CapCut. Other systems, I suspect, will have other similar features. If it's a shorter piece of vertical content, you can always load it up into an Instagram Reel post and have it make the captions for you, then download that file and bring it over to Facebook or cross-post it. For Facebook, one of the differences I see is that I tend to have good interaction on longer form content. As a result, attention span seems a little bit longer for things people find interesting and valuable. I have a business page, and boosted posts from this business page are easy. If your Facebook business and Instagram accounts are connected, your boosts can post to Instagram and Messenger if you allow them to, making it pretty easy to get one piece of content on a few different places. In Ads Manager, you can also set up a meta pixel. If you put this on your website, you can track who clicked, and from there, you can retarget that audience. Say over January, 500 people clicked through your ad. Maybe 300 of those couples didn't have a venue and a date yet, so they weren't thinking seriously about a photographer. Targeting them again with a retarget a few weeks later will give them a much better chance of booking with you. You're now a familiar person, and they may have forgotten to write your name down. Couples have a lot going on when they first get engaged. Another thing I talk a lot about in Book More Weddings is having 3 points of contact to get a booking. Hitting a couple with a single targeted ad might get you that booking now and then. However, what's really powerful is when that paid ad is the third place they see you. Maybe they see you on the venues page on Instagram, then a friend mentions that you shot their wedding, then they click through a paid ad. By that point, they are warmed up to and are significantly more likely to book. Being around in many different places increases your chances of being in front of them at the correct time. Early wedding plans are a mess. Maybe they're going to have a destination wedding and then they realize that the family can't travel, so they decide to get married back home and there's a different wedding day. Most couples will wait to get all of that out of the way before sending through an inquiry. For this reason, retargeting is very powerful. So set up your meta pixel and use it on your paid ads. At the point of writing this, you can only retarget properly from a standalone ad. Trying to do it from a boosted post is still a little bit messy. Hopefully that gets cleaned up, because I would love to easily be able to set up those campaigns in a few clicks. Facebook, like Instagram, it's key to make valuable content that people want to interact with, content that people will find valuable. I recommend summarizing some of that value on the Facebook post and then getting them to click over to your website once they're interested. In the paid ads chapter, we discussed how watching, reading, or liking the ad doesn't cost you a lot of money, usually pennies. What does cost you the money is when they click through the link to go to the ad. For this reason, it's important to ensure they're a good and qualified lead before getting that click through. Your ad dollars will go a lot further this way. We also talked about doing $5 a day in paid ads. You can split that up with Facebook and Instagram if you want to try it out, or add a few other dollars to test out Facebook. Retargeting is incredibly valuable and something you should for sure be using. Chapter 33, Pinterest. Pinterest is big in the wedding planning space. Outside of that, I don't know too many power users of it. I like how easily the content you post there will rank on Google and in Google image searches. I don't have any experience with paid ads on Pinterest, but I encourage you to try them out if they seem interesting to you. For example, if you have a few good wedding images that you would like to promote, they could find their way onto many different boards and continue to bring in clicks for years. You can also create style boards here to send to couples for engagement session ideas. Lindsay does this for outfits. In addition, she also has boards for family sessions, engagement sessions, and newborn sessions. It's very easy to get couples on the same page as you with these boards. It's worth posting images here for how easily they're indexed by Google and organically how they'll end up on couples' inspiration boards. Of course, venues will also collect images here as well. Chapter 34, TikTok. TikTok's massive advantage is local reach. They now also support image carousels, which works well for us as wedding photographers. I have a TikTok course for members, but I'll mention some things here. While TikTok came up on entertaining content, there's now a huge market for educational content. So I would now suggest making educational video content to a local audience. Start videos and hooks with visuals local people will recognize, wedding venues or your downtown area. TikTok is not new at this point, but there is still an opportunity in most markets to be the first wedding education person. Sure, there are some people that have probably done some small pieces of content, but it's unlikely that someone has focused a few months on that content style. In terms of ages, TikTok is a lot younger demographic than Facebook. This means if you spend some time creating content and developing an audience, it will hit the correct market for years to come. While TikTok will try to convert you to someone that posts 10 times per day, you don't have to. A business like wedding photography is a marathon, not a sprint. By creating 1 or 2 useful pieces of content per week, you'll make 50 or 100 videos in a year. And when someone locally comes across those videos, they will be shown a lot of your back catalog as well. Find a sustainable way to create TikTok content because it will burn you out if you let it. One struggle I have with TikTok is getting people off of the app and to your website. So make a clear call to action at the end of each video to visit your site for even more useful information about planning a wedding in your local area. When it comes to hashtags, I like to stay targeted to local couples, and I don't use bigger hashtags just to get the vanity metrics. Well, it might be nice to get those views. Those people won't stick around for longer videos, and they're going to eventually hurt your organic reach. Another huge plus to TikTok is that every video seems to be somewhat independent of one another. So what that means, if you upload a video that no one interacts with or watches, it doesn't affect the next one. TikTok works similar to Instagram in the way that reach works. First, the platform will find a few users, likely the ones that are following you or are currently interested in the topic. If those users react positively to the content, it will show it to a larger group. Kind of summarize this in round numbers to keep it easy. You upload something to TikTok, it shows it to 100 people. Those 100 people have a positive overall interaction. TikTok's going to send it to the next group, which is 1,000 people. If successful there, it goes to 10,000 people, then 100,000 people, then 1 million. These have been my experiences so far. I have a few 1 million plus videos and a 10 million plus video that still continues to generate views and interaction every single day. I find this to be true with Instagram Reels as well, that if you make a good reel that people share, it will continue cycling it into a viewer's mix even when it is an old video. The key is that you need a new video for that user to interact with before it shows the older content to them. I've had videos from months ago randomly gain a lot of traction because of this. When I posted it, maybe it wasn't the right time, or the topic wasn't popular yet, or maybe that day there was just too much content being posted on the platform and it didn't give it a fair chance. Whatever the reason, it's nice that content can continue to be successful long after it's posted. If you enjoy and understand TikTok, this might be your place. Chapter 35, YouTube. I've spent the past number of years creating content for YouTube, but unfortunately it's not in the space that we're going to be talking about today. I create travel content, photography education, gear reviews. Unfortunately, these things don't book many weddings. Here's what I would do on YouTube now if I had the time. I would be creating value-rich, locally based, helpful content. I would create content around search terms that I knew couples were typing in. You can even go to ChatGPT, ask it for 20 titles for YouTube videos about whatever topic you want to make a video about, and then choose the best one. As weird as it is, you have to start with the title and sometimes even the thumbnail for YouTube content. Those are the keys to getting the clicks so someone actually watches the video. The good news is that Google owns YouTube, so there's a good chance that couples searching, they will see the video above other text search results. In terms of competition, for every venue in your area, there are probably over 100 blog posts with text and images, but very few of them have made that into a video. You can also embed that video into your text page, and together those pieces of content will work together to rank stronger than just one on their own. With YouTube, you can also play around with a lot of other marketing strategies that no one else is doing. You can do venue walkthroughs and tours. You can interview other wedding vendors. You can do behind the scenes of a wedding day with a venue or a vendor or even yourself. You can talk about how to plan the perfect wedding. Then you can break it up into smaller content pieces like the 5 things I wish I knew before having my wedding in city name. There are a lot of different options for video content. These pieces of content can also be made into short verticals and text content for your blog. Another big piece of content I don't see many people doing are behind the scenes wedding days, but targeting the venue that they're at. I see a huge missed opportunity here. Couples are very interested in seeing an actual wedding day at the venue that they're choosing. If I was in my first years of business, I would be trying to make a 10 to 20 minute behind the scenes video for every single one of the weddings that I photograph. After years of doing this, you'd have lots of venues covered with unique pieces of content that no one else is doing. Bringing it back to talk about social media, you'll notice that creating for one platform usually creates content for most platforms. So starting from something like YouTube videos can trickle down into all the other platforms, including your traditional blog. Chapter 36, Mindset, Marketing, and Attracting Couples. Marketing a wedding photography business is a weird task. It's not something that you sit down for 3 hours to do on Mondays. Instead, it's something that's always on your mind, at least a little bit. When a couple is looking for a photographer, it's such a small window. While it might seem like social media should be the place to get the click to your site and make the sale, it rarely works out like that. What social media is for me is a long game. It is about connecting couples to me, the person behind the camera. The landscape of what a wedding photographer is has shifted so heavily over the past couple of years. Looking back even 5 years ago, if you were slightly above average in photography, you could book a wedding based on your photo skills. As great photography becomes easier to make, the market is becoming even more saturated that I would consider to be excellent. It's great to see the industry reach a new level of quality, but from a business standpoint, things are getting more complicated. More than ever, couples are looking for a photographer that they connect with and that fits their social status tribe. Great work is a prerequisite to doing business. The sale gets made in the connection with your couple. While it's possible to create a connection in the hours or the few days the couple is actively looking for a wedding photographer, it's rarely the case. Photographers that book the most work are always playing the long game. This means successful photographers are showing up for their brand and themselves every single day on platforms like Instagram stories. The photographers I see doing the best do interesting things in the local community. They're creating content each day to align themselves with their tribe. They know that one individual reel isn't going to book them an entire season, that it's a collection of all of the content they produce when someone is paying attention. So how do you get people to pay attention? There's a simple answer. Deliver value over a long period of time. What value is will be different for everyone. It can be a combination of many things. For example, it can be educational, entertaining, or interactive. An Instagram story of a lunch you ate brings no value to the viewer. Contrast that with going out of your way to test the new 5 local pizza shops around your town and rank them. Then you can make a reel with the results. That's interesting, brings value, and it will be shared. There is now an element of being a professional social media personality in a successful photography business. There's also a good chance that many of your local competitors don't want to do this. They might even reject the new shift in their business if they've been established for a while. That leaves space for you to gain market share. You will win if you understand how to bring value to your audience. The more value you bring, the more your audience will grow. If you bring value to wedding venues, you'll be on the preferred vendor list faster. If you bring value to the vendors, you're always going to be their first referral on their minds. Rather than thinking about how I make more content, think about how you generate more value for others with your time. Then, when you create from a place like this, you will succeed. Chapter 37, Closing Thoughts. With wedding photography, building a business that makes you happy is important. I've met a lot of burnt out wedding photographers, happy they get to use a camera to pay the bills, but have lost all passion for weddings and their business. If from the start you're intentional about making the choices that will make you the most happy, you will create the business of your dreams. The parameters for what your wedding photography business is can change as you wish. If you want to book 10 local weddings and 10 destination weddings this year, that is a thing within your control. Do you want to book 70 weddings this year and then take the full year off next year to travel the world? Go ahead. If there are elements of your wedding business that you do not enjoy, you can hire someone to fill those spaces. Don't enjoy doing taxes, hire someone and put the time you saved towards booking another wedding. Even though it seems like it's a short-term loss to spend the money, you are buying back your time. You can use it to profit more or just relax. My first few years in business were a struggle. Working with non-ideal couples has a big mental impact. It will make you second guess your journey. Know that when you start working with your ideal couples, that everything turns around. First, you're excited to go to work. Your couples are excited to see you. Going back to the 6 human needs, you can find everything in wedding photography. Number 1, certainty. You want to know that you have enough money to put food on the table, that jobs are coming in. Number 2, variety. All your weddings are a little bit different. And if you're sick of weddings, you can do more family work or commercial. Number 3, significance. You're doing something that your couples and the venues appreciate. They go out of their way to make you feel special. Number 4, connection and love. You're going to meet so many incredible people in the wedding industry that will become lifelong friends. Number 5, growth. You're going to grow weekly as an artist and a business owner. And number 6, contribution. You're contributing your time and creating memories that will last for generations. Working for yourself also comes with the advantage of completely controlling your schedule. Again, this is something that I value highly. You're no longer forced to go to the grocery store on a busy Saturday morning. Instead, you can go on a Tuesday afternoon. There is still work to do, but it is a long game. Very few things are urgent, and your week can be laid out as you choose. I am very happy that you are serious enough about this journey to make it to the end of this audiobook. And if you want to get into more videos, I have a lot up on my YouTube channel, or you can come on over to the members website at taylorjacksoncourses.com. Hundreds of hours of courses and other content will help you get your business to the place you want it even faster. Till I see you again, I am Taylor Jackson. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this book, please leave a review or post an Instagram story and tag me in it. I will be happy to reshare it. See you next time.